If we could call the meeting to order, have everybody rise for the Lord's Prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Armand Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Rita Mercia.
Here.
Councilor Milanazzo.
Here.
Councilor Ramirez. Here. 9 present.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes from the September 12th meeting. Motion approved by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. I'm sorry. Chair recognizes Councilor Mercia for a moment of silence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chambers for two lovely women who passed away last week. Lorraine Rourke, a lifelong Lowell resident who was very active in the Lowell Senior Center and devoted to her family. She leaves 2 daughters, Laurie McKay and Joanne Nelson, as well as 4 grandchildren. As well as I'd like darkened chambers and a moment of silence for Marguerite Barton, a longtime Lowell resident who was an active member of the Immaculate Conception Church, Women's Guild, and prayer group of that parish. She was the mother of Joseph Barton, who died in 2002. Surviving her is a son, David Barton, and a daughter, Ann Barton, who has worked in the city's planning department for many years as a traffic engineer, city planner, deputy director, you name it, she's been in charge of it. Marguerite also leaves a granddaughter and 2 great-grandchildren. These 2 lovely women will be truly missed. Thank you.
Thank you. May they rest in peace. Okay. Under unfinished business, we have one item requesting the manager report on process and plan to be implemented in filling vacancies on boards and commissions. Mr. Manager.
I think this question had been raised once before regarding the process I was utilizing to fill positions on various committees and boards that to which I make appointments. I think I noted at the time that the process I was using was advertising for people that were interested in serving the city on those boards or committees or any boarding committee, and I wasn't necessarily requesting that they select a board, and instead that they would simply send me their application, their resume, a letter of interest outlining their qualifications, and I would look to place them on a board or a committee that was relevant to those qualifications. Certainly I didn't prevent anyone from requesting to be placed on a specific committee, whether it be the Housing Authority, Historic Board, Planning Board, or any of the other boards that we have. I think the question that was raised at the last council meeting that which I was not present at was with regards to some of the most recent appointments that there, in fact apparently there's a policy of the council to have resumes or applications of all people that I consider for a particular appointment provided to the council members. I was not aware of that in all of those appointments that I made, but I have since provided for the committee appointment, the Board of Appeals that I'm appointing to tonight. I have provided you with copies of the resumes of the people that specifically requested to be placed on the Board of Appeals. I have a number of applications, obviously, of people who haven't chosen the Board of Appeals, but I certainly looked at as possibilities. But these are the people that specifically requested the Board of Appeals that I considered before making the appointments that I'm making tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager. So let's say there's an opening for the Zoning Board of Appeals, ZBA, and let's say that you're going to make a recommendation. whether this council votes, it's placed on file, and it's not, we don't have to vote on a particular, whatever board or commission it is. I personally, I don't know about my colleagues, we have a policy in place that, let's say that you select Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones or whatever, and maybe 5 people applied. We would like the resumes of those 5 that applied, along with who you chose. That's what we're just asking for. That was what we were, are you intending to do that?
I've provided that to you tonight.
Right, you have. And so let's say there were 5 people that applied in the past for a particular position on the board or a commission. Did you interview every one of those people?
In this particular case, I did not.
You did not?
No, I did in some of my prior appointments that I've made. I have interviewed everyone. In these particular cases, I did not interview everyone.
And I wonder why you would not do that. I'm just asking you, why would you not interview someone?
Some of the people, the qualifications were very clear, that there were a number of people that were qualified, and others that may not have had the qualifications for the particular post. Just as, if I may, just as a for example, you recently hired a city manager. You didn't interview all 30 some odd candidates. You narrowed it down to the people that you felt were qualified. Likewise, when I make appointments, I'm looking at, a number of people that have applied, a number of letters of people that are just interested in serving somewhere, and I'm just going to interview the people who meet the minimum qualifications and try to select from that.
The people that you didn't interview, did you send them a letter stating that you chose someone else, but thank you for applying?
Yes.
You did do that?
Yes. I do that for all of those.
The reason I say that is because I don't see what the problem is to take a little extra time to get to know the people that you felt weren't qualified. That's personally my opinion. And the reason I say that is because I'm sitting here today because a former city manager of long ago didn't give me 5 minutes of his time. And so who would I be to sit here and let this slip by without stating my opinion, how I feel? I feel everybody that applied is at least worth 5 minutes of your time. I don't know, that's my opinion, so I'm stating that.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, to the councilor, I don't disagree that it's worthwhile to spend the time. As I said, for all of the other appointments that I've made to date, I have sat down and spent a time with each one of the applicants. I think you can go off and talk to a number of those people. I find it to be very helpful. On the other hand, if people aren't qualified, don't meet the minimum qualifications, I have a number of people that clearly do. Frankly, I think it's it's tough to have someone drive all the way down to City Hall just so I can spend a perfunctory 5 minutes with them. Instead, what I do is I notify them that I appreciate their sending me their application, that I am going to hold on to it, and that I'd like to consider them for a position in the future. And at some later date, I will sit down with them.
Well, I wish you would sit down with each one so that maybe you didn't catch something in their resume, but you catch something talking to them on a one-to-one basis. And that's my opinion. And you can throw that in the basket, but I feel that it's my opinion, and it's worth to get to know someone rather than maybe they forgot to put something down.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Well, these are new suggestions that I never heard before with the prior administration. But as I recall, the motion that and it was a policy, but more of a request that we be provided with copies of resumes. At the time, I believe I was the one who made the motion, and there were members of the council who disagreed strongly with that recommendation, feeling that it's the manager's prerogative, it's the manager's choice, and I acknowledge that then, and I do now. It is the manager's choice on many of these appointments, whatever way, shape, or form the manager wants to do that. The reason I had felt that we should have copies of the resumes, because we're asked to confirm, and it's difficult to do it in the vacuum. And most of the time, or many times, we know the individuals, so maybe you have no problem saying, all right, I know that individual, they're experienced, they've been in the community, I don't have a problem. But there are sometimes names come up that you have no idea. And sometimes the council can be criticized that someone more qualified had applied, and we didn't know that. And so it gives us the option of at least looking at who was in the final mix, because there could be hundreds of applications. And quite frankly, if there are so many things in this city, I don't see that it's even possible. Just like the council didn't interview hundreds of people for the positions. But whatever is the final pool, I think we should know so that we can make an intelligent decision as to whether we want to confirm or not. That does not invade the province or violate the charter or violate, general laws in terms of, it's still the manager's prerogative, it's still the manager's choice to nominate a name. But I do think, and I think we asked for an opinion, and it's kind of a gray area, and I think it's just one that, in the way it was resolved before, was the prior administration said, we'll give them to you.
Right.
And so rather than making a rule that could be construed as violating the charter in terms of the council meddling in appointments, the intent is not to meddle. The intent is just to make an informed confirmation, yes or no. So that was my take on it, and I think if we can, we have them tonight, and if we can have them in the future, it would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. I think it's nice to be provided with the resumes, and I think the way you're going to go about it, Mr. Manager, to make a selection, but also keep the resumes on file, so people understand that there might have been someone else you thought was more suitable for whatever reason, but their offer to serve is still going to be considered, and they may be contacted in the future. And to send out a letter to that effect, I think is gracious. I don't think necessarily that we can impose upon you to interview everybody that applies. I don't know how many applications you get a week or in the last couple of months, but 5 minutes is never 5 minutes. I try and make a 5-minute phone call. It takes me 15, 20 minutes, and I know with the workload that we're giving you on the motions, that it must be difficult enough to even get to the resumes. Never mind trying to set up the schedule interviews and without making people feel rushed. 5 minutes, come on in, yep, okay, well, thank you, you'll hear from me. They're going to maybe leave with a more bitter taste. So I disagree with that, but I can understand the intent of it to make people feel appreciated in their effort to serve. But I think that, there's only so much you can do as one person, and we've got you stretched pretty thin right now. But I think this is a good process right now. We get the resumes, we can keep them on file, and as the appointments come in, you can send us the ones you considered, or the ones that applied for that position as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager. Again, I think it's a good process. I appreciate getting the resumes. I do have a comment on the resumes, though, that we did receive this evening. It was my understanding that another individual had applied for the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that individual may, in fact, be interested in another position, but that resume is not part of this package, and I just don't want, again, I'm not going to publicly state who that is, but I don't want that person to feel as though that application wasn't seriously considered by you, Mr. Manager. So,
if you'd like to speak with me offline
Okay.
about that, Councilor, I'd be happy to
Okay.
check and see which particular applicant
Okay.
that was.
no, I'm just, again, right, okay.
Okay, anything further? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, what is the process currently? I'm looking to the next. We have other appointments tonight, but there's a number of boards, a number opening on our boards and regulatory commissions. What is the process? And I think we need to tighten it up because they play very important functions in government, and there are a lot of people throughout the community that are interested, that ask us all the time, I'd like to get involved. What is open? What is available? What am I qualified to do? So I'm just thinking out loud that the clerk, Mr. Clerk, you're the sort of the keeper of the terms and when they expire. Is there, can we put a notification process either to the manager or, between the two of you, posting, some central posting, whether it's online, whether it's outside the clerk's office, or even on, and maybe not online because everybody doesn't, have a computer, but either online or on a local access channel, these are positions that are currently open. Send a letter of interest to the manager's office, and I think that'll at least let people know what's open. And I know it's going to be a little bit more work, but, you know, it's important. I think it's, if we get a process in place and we get a procedure, then people know what's open, what they can apply for. I appreciate the fact that you sent them a letter acknowledging receipt of it, and that's a good practice. It's a good change, and that tells people that, you know, the government is listening to them. I sent the letter, or I sent an email, and they acknowledged it, and they sent it back, which I think that we should continue to do. So, Mr. Clerk, I don't know if that's possible for you to let the manager, maybe give an updated list on everything from, I don't know, hunger homeless to, you know, we see appointments every week, and I know there's always some vacancies. So, rather than belaboring the point, if we can get a sort of a process in place, this is what we're going to do. This is where it's going to be advertised. This is, you know, where people can send their letter of interest. I think the people would be happy.
Mr. Manager.
Councilor, we do have them online currently. We have placed press releases out to the local newspaper that we're looking for applicants. We're always looking to improve that process, and I'll certainly work with the clerk and the law department, which I believe does keep many of the terms and the vacancies, and we'll continue to improve that process as we move forward.
All right,
There's clearly, Councilor Broderick brought up the amount of work that's out there right now. There's quite a bit of work to be done, and this is one area that I take very seriously, of getting people involved in their local government.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Under the city manager's portion of the agenda, we have various communications from the city manager responding to council motions and requests. It's a motion to accept the same and place on file by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Elliott. Any particular questions about any of those items? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? That motion is approved. Next item is a communication from the manager accepting the resignation of Frank Cortez from the Hunger Homeless Commission. And there is a letter in the file from Mr. Cortez resigning from the position due to other time commitments, and also a thank you letter for service from the manager. Motion to accept and place on file by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we have a communication from the city manager pursuant to the authority vested in me as city manager under Chapter 382 of the Acts of 1991 and Code of City of Lowell, Section 2-120. I am appointing the following person to the Hunger Homeless Commission to fill the term of Mr. Frank Cortez, expiring August 22nd, 2007, or until such time thereafter as a successor is appointed and qualified. Felicita Roman of Catholic Charity, 70 Lawrence Street, Lowell. Under the above referenced ordinance, confirmation by the council is not required. I'd be happy to answer any inquiries you may have.
Motion we place on file.
Motion to accept and place on file by Councilor Armin Mercier, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those. We have anyone registered to speak? Mr. Clerk? Motion to suspend the rules by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Broderick, to allow a member of the public to speak on this appointment. If you just please give us your name and address for our records, ma'am, and be reminded we do have a 5-minute rule.
Okay, I have over 11 years' experience in the government, so I'm familiar with the rules. My name is Sharon Elizabeth Creamer. I live at 7 Westford Street, room number 8. I actually just saw this yesterday, or else I would have spoken up earlier. I find it interesting, her name. The reason that I find it interesting is because I am not new around here. I go back 17 generations here. My ancestor, Richard Herndon, created Wilmington. I grew up in Tewksbury. I lived in Lowell until 1982, and I recently moved back in a little bit over 2 years ago. I ended up being homeless a little bit over a year and a half ago after being illegally thrown out of my apartment. I was at the homeless shelter. I have a college education. I have an excellent business background. I do not take drugs, and I was looking for a job. I was there for 25 days, and I was thrown out on Christmas night. I ended up sleeping at the hospital for 4 hours in the lobby, and that's how I saved my life that night. It was very cold. What I find interesting about this is that it's a blessing that I'm here. After my mother passed away in May 2002, my father dumped me like a hot potato. I realized that my father was part of the problem. What I find very interesting about this is that basically what I have found out in the last few years is it's all about me. I had a Herald search done in 2003, and I found out that the order of English royalty in the world are the Spencers, or Princess Diana, the Kennedys, and myself through my Hondan bloodline. I also knew at the time that September 11th was a direct attack against myself, which I found out in 2004 is in my high school yearbook. A little precipitous.
Ma'am, you really need to stick to the appointment at issue.
I am sticking to the issue. What I find interesting about this is Joseph Tucker, who is back at the shelter, who is English and Roman Catholic born and bred, had a problem with the shelter. I also am English and Roman born and bred, and I have had a problem with the shelter. To give you a little bit of what I go through on a daily basis, and part of the reasons I went to the City Hall yesterday was because in the last month and a half, I have been attacked verbally by 8 people, 7 of which are due to government agencies or people. This is what I go through on a daily basis. To give you a for instance, when Joseph Tucker was out on medical leave, both Social Security and welfare tried to cut my benefits. This is what I go through all the time. Come to find out, English and Roman is really one and the same. I'm almost finished.
Okay.
So I find it a little bit interesting that Felicita is a bit like Feliz, which is part of Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas in Spanish, and Roman is her last name. I question whether this is truly her real name, and I would like to have that investigated further.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Actually, if I could interject for one more second, I actually came here because I had an issue with the library last Friday, and is there any time for a public, I don't see any meetings here. This is a city meeting. I don't see any space here for the public to come in and speak. Do I need to be put on the agenda?
You need to file a
Because I
petition
was
with
at
the
the
city
town
clerk.
hall. I did go to the town hall yesterday. I was told to just show up tonight.
Okay,
So I'm
well, we
here.
heard from you on this issue. That other item is not on our agenda this evening, so.
Well, but I was not informed. I spoke, I believe it was this gentleman, I'm not sure. I spoke to him. I went to Mayor Martin's office. He was not there. I went to City Manager Lynch's office. He was not there. I went back and spoke to Mrs. LeMay and spoke to her for a good half hour. So I was not informed that I had to be put on the agenda. I was informed to just show up this evening. Hence, I'm here.
Okay, well, we did hear from you on this issue. Unfortunately, rules are our
If
rules.
there would be time for me to get another 5 minutes, I would like to regale my experience at the library the other day, which was
No.
very...
Mr. Mayor, point of order. In fairness, it's not on the agenda. We do have to go by the rules because, so that we're prepared for whatever,
Okay, then
the
I should have been
speakers
informed of
complain.
this yesterday. I would have been happy to ask
And
to be
just,
put on the agenda.
and I know it's difficult,
spoke
the
to 2
rules, but
people.
the agenda's done a week before and actually has to be in the Friday before. So, but you
Okay,
can
that's
speak
fine,
to the.
but I worked for the town of Tewksbury for a year and a half
Okay.
doing the meetings, and usually there
Okay.
is time for...
But we
You're-
have,
people to
we're in
speak.
You're out of
Lowell,
order, ma'am.
and
You're-
so maybe if the speaker can contact the city clerk's office tomorrow, whatever the petition is can be put on the agenda for next week.
I would have appreciated being told that yesterday. I would have made further steps to try to be put on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, motion to accept the communication placed on file by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Armen-Mercier. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The communication is accepted. The next item is a communication from the city manager. Dear Mayor Martin and members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority specified under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 12, in the Code of City of Lowell, Section 2-41, it is a pleasure that I am reappointing the following members as members of the Board of Appeals. John Knox of 5 Hampshire Street, Lowell, as an associate member to a new 5-year term expiring April 19th, 2011, or such time thereafter as his appointment is, as his successor is appointed and qualified. Mr. Knox has been serving in holdover status since his last term of appointment expired April 19th, 2006. Also, Vesta Noon of 104 Westford Street, Lowell, to a new 5-year term expiring April 2nd, 2011, or such time thereafter as a successor is appointed and qualified. Mr. Noon has been serving in holdover status since his last term of appointment expired April 2nd, 2006. It is with pleasure I am appointing Stephen B. Geary, 25 Knob Way, to fill the unexpired term of Daniel Squigler to a 5-year term expiring January 10, 2011, or such time thereafter as a successor is appointed and qualified. I've attached a copy of Mr. Geary's resume for your review. Confirmation by the City Council is required for these appointments and is hereby requested.
Motion to accept the recommendation of the city manager.
Okay. Motion to approve by Councilor Rita Mercier, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you. Through you to the city manager. If you could, Mr. Manager, I plan on supporting your recommendation, but could you enlighten the council as to Mr. Geary's recommendation, if you could, please?
Councilor, as I indicated, I went through the resumes and looked at the background of the various people that had applied for the Board of Appeals, as well as the accumulation of other resumes and applications that I had received. I was specifically looking at the Board of Appeals and the need for someone with a background in law that could assist the Board of Appeals in making their decisions within the confines of the Massachusetts general laws.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, could you send a letter of thanks to Dan Sequela for his 6 years of dedicated service to our city? Thank you.
Councilor, that letter has already gone out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Arman Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
9
The next item is an order designating the intersection of Farmland Road and Essex Street in the city of Lowell as Metropolis Brothers Memorial in honor of the Metropolis Brothers, whereas the city is desirous of honoring the Metropolis Brothers, now it is therefore ordained by the City Council of the City of Lowell that the intersection of Farmland Road and Essex Street in the City of Lowell be designated Metropolis Brothers Memorial in honor of the Metropolis Brothers. Second reading by title, an order designating the intersection of Farmland Road and Essex Street in the City of Lowell as Metropolis Brothers Memorial in honor of the Metropolis Brothers. Councilor Rita Mercier.
I thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a request from Mrs. Diana Metropolis requesting a Veterans Square for her husband and 3 brothers, the husband and his 3 brothers. The site requested is farmland in Essex Street. They resided at 130 Farmland Road at the time they entered the service. The 4 are as follows: Lewis, United States, World War II, private first class, entered the service March 11th of 42 until October 3rd, 45. Served with the 351st Infantry Regiment. He was in the Battle of Sicily, Naples, Foggia, Rome, Arno, North Apennines, and Po Valley. He was awarded the Good Conduct Medal, World War II Victory Medal in the European, African, Middle Eastern Theater Campaign. Charles Metropolis was awarded many honors. He served in the United States Navy as a pharmacist mate, and he entered World War II on April 13th, 1942. He was killed in action on July 3rd, 1944 in Saipan. He was awarded the Purple Heart, the Asiatic Pacific Medal, and many other awards. Richard Metropolis served in the United States Navy, World War II pharmacist mate. He entered in 41 until 1947. He served on many naval ships as a pharmacist mate, USS Wabash, USS Seekonk in the Pacific area. He also served with the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marine, 1st Marine Division. He was awarded the American Defense Medal, American Theater, Asiatic Pacific Medal, the Victory Medal, and the Good Conduct Medal. Peter J. Metropolis, United States Army, World War II, Tech 5, entered in 43 to 46. Campaigns of Normandy, Northern France. He was awarded the World War II Victory Medal, Good Conduct Medal, and the European African Middle Eastern Service Medal. He was discharged in '46, and he's with the 818th Service Company. For the record, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the city clerk, and I know it'll be presented from Joe Dussault in the Veterans Office correctly, but for the record, it's Metropolis, L-O-S, L-O-S, not L-I-S, but it'll be corrected. It is an honor to present this on behalf of the wife. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Motion to approve the order by Councilor Rita Mercier, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Roll call, please.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armand Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, matters approved. The next item is an order designating the intersection of Farragut Street and 7th Avenue in the city of Lowell as the Daniel J. Gannon Memorial in honor of Daniel J. Gannon. Whereas the city is desirous of honoring Daniel J. Gannon, now therefore it is ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell that the intersection of Farragut Street and 7th Avenue in the City of Lowell is hereby designated Daniel J. Gannon Memorial in honor of Daniel J. Gannon. Second reading by title, an order designating the intersection of Farragut Street and 7th Avenue in the City of Lowell, Daniel J. Gannon Memorial in honor of Daniel J. Gannon. Is there any objection to me making a few comments from here about Mr. Gannon? He was a World War II veteran, served in the United States Army Air Corps as a sergeant. He enlisted in June 1944 and served until June 1946. He was an aerial gunner and served in the European campaign. His awards include the American Campaign Medal, the European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medals, a Good Conduct Medal, World War II Victory Medal, and the Army Occupational Medal. Mr. Gannon also gave many dedicated years to the city of Lowell. I'm happy to offer this memorial as a fitting tribute on behalf of his family and for his memory. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy you're bringing this forward. Mr. Gannon, from a proud family in Pawtuckaville. As you indicated, he has served his city, his state, and he served his country with pride and distinction. And I know the entire Gannon family is extremely happy and proud that you brought this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armand Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercier?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay, the next item is a quarterly traffic ordinance. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 13 thereof, titled Motor Vehicles and Traffic. Is there a motion to waive the full reading of this by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Caulfield? All those in favor of waiving the full reading say aye. Any opposed? The full reading is waived. This matter gets referred to a public hearing on October 10th. So moved by Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor of referring this matter to a public hearing on October 10th say aye. Any opposed? The matter is referred to a public hearing on October 10th. Next item is a vote declaring surplus the property at 172 Lakeview Avenue, Lowell, Massachusetts, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals for the disposition thereof under the City of Lowell Homework Program adopted by the City Council April 4th, 2000. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Milonazo, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor of waiving the full reading say aye. Any opposed? The full reading is waived. Second reading by title. A vote declaring surplus the property at 172 Lakeview Avenue, Lowell, Massachusetts, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals for the disposition thereof under the City of Lowell Homework Program adopted by the City Council on April 4, 2000. Questions? Okay. Councilor Donahue.
Yeah, I certainly approve this, but I think it might be helpful to hear from either the manager or Mr. Coggins describing this particular project. We've done a few of these in the past. They're very successful, and this one in particular it seems to be 3 condominiums. Is that the case? So if we could just hear. The only question I had was, that we've been doing this now for 6 years or over 6
Right, we
years.
started in the spring of 2000.
How many of these homework projects have we been able to
This is actually
complete?
our sixth one.
Okay.
I guess just by way of background, we actually acquired this property through the tax title process in 1999. The time the city equity in it was $87,000. It was one of, again, we really haven't acquired a lot of property as some of the residential values were coming up, but this is our sixth project. We've created three-bedroom condominiums. As you have seen from the information before you, the appraisal actually came in at $189,000 per unit. We have priced them at $169,000 per unit. We are allowed to do that under an exemption in Chapter 30B for the creation of affordable or disposition of affordable housing. The entire project was funded with our home funds. We will again do a lottery system if in fact we have more than 3 qualified applicants. And again, these units are made available to people who earn up to 80% of the area median income. And just to give you a perspective of that, for a family of 4, that means just under $50,000 a year would qualify you to apply.
Thank you. I mean, this is really a great use of property that had been, really in terrible condition, no money coming into the city in terms of taxes, and now there's 3 potential homes or condominiums at a very good price and affordable condos, and 3 families could be looking at new homes. So I asked for the explanation just because there are so many things that go on behind the scenes that I think a lot of times people are unaware of. And this was a project that I remember the first one that was done, I think, was over
Chestnut Street.
Yep. Which was a great project. And you take these dilapidated homes and put families in them and put them on the tax roll. So it's a great
I should just explain too, the city staff actually acts as the general contractor. That's one of the ways that we're able to control the amount of dollars that actually have to be invested from the home program into each structure. And then obviously the work is subbed out by our staff. But
Yeah.
it is a great program and we're happy to keep it going.
Thank you.
Councilor Remercier?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the planning director. Is this a owner-occupied?
Yes, as with our program,
project?
they will be required that they be owner-occupied, absolutely.
What type of a dwelling or parcel was this before? Was it a?
It was a 3-family unit.
It was a 3-family
Yeah.
unit.
And there was an additional structure in the back that was taken down, well,
Okay.
nearly fell down, but.
This is a great project. It truly is. I see that we should have an inventory of all parcels that are dilapidated and left in disarray to see what we can do. And I say this because some weeks ago I made a motion to see what happened with the abandoned parcel of property at 68 Wollaston Street, because you couldn't even see it. I didn't know there was a parcel there because it was so overgrown, and it was left abandoned for 2 years now. And I thought at a meeting, at the neighborhood meeting the other night, we talked about that, and something should be done. Now, I understand that the city sent a notice to this parcel's owner, who none of the family responded. So the city went over there and cut down all the shrubbery and trees and everything else at our own expense. What are we going to do about stuff like this? I think we should be hearing you come here at least once or twice a month telling us that this is now going to be on the tax roll. There's not $11,000 in the arrears. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know that property specifically, but I can tell you that when we do use municipal services against a property like that, we do lien it for those expenses. So at some point, if the property is sold, if it ends up in foreclosure, that's the city's, ability to recapture those funds. Obviously, it doesn't, help us in the short term, but I mean, we can certainly look at that property. I don't know whether they're current in their taxes or not. As I was saying to Councilor Donahue, as the residential values came up, we are seeing less and less tax title property actually come into the possession of the city because it's now advantageous for people to pay off back taxes and either sell the property on their own or redevelop it or do something else. But we did respond to part of your motion. We are continuing to look at properties that the city has. We will continue to do self-assessments that are required to make sure there is not a municipal use for any of the property. And where appropriate, we will continue to come before this body and look to either dispose of property either as affordable housing or just sell it, depending upon the market conditions. So I expect we'll be back before you relatively soon.
Good, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you back real soon. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, also in response to Councilor Mercier's questions regarding the bringing more property, city properties online as tax-producing properties. Councilor Broderick at the prior meeting asked for some work to be done on an inventory of city-owned parcels, and I believe I forwarded that to you in your packet this week. And we're doing some follow-up work with staff to isolate the ones that have particular value and have particular opportunities for the city to raise revenue, but also to advance some of the community development goals of the city in areas such as economic development and affordable housing. So we will be following up on that.
Thank you. Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Coggins. The affordable restriction on these properties, is it in perpetuity?
Yeah, it's a full deed restriction in
It is a full
perpetuity,
deed
correct.
restriction, okay. Is it 80% of the area median, or does it?
80%, up to 80%,
Up to 80%,
correct.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Roll call.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Mayor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Armand Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Rita Mercia?
Yes.
Councilor Milonazo?
Yes.
Councilor Ramirez? Yes.
9 yeas approved. Subcommittee reports. Councilor Caulfield?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Neighborhood Traffic Subcommittee convened a meeting last evening at 6 o'clock in the Mayor's reception room. Those in attendance was Manager Lynch, Assistant City Manager Matt Coggins, Neighborhood Services Mike Damaris, Judge Priokas, Chief Planner DPD. The neighborhood representatives, and it was well attended. From back Central Street was David Koch. From Belvedere, Stacy Marsden and Kelly Joyce. Centerville, Anne Marie Page and Pat Hunt. Pawtuckaville, Jerry Frechette, Richard Cavell, Richard Souza. From Sacred Heart, South Lowell, Cal McCarthy, Elaine Patano. Tyler Park, Jay Mason. The Lowell Downtown Neighborhood Association, Kathleen Marson. And the Highlands Betterment Neighborhood Organization, Nancy Judge, could not be there. She had another commitment serving on the suitability subcommittee. Mr. Mayor, Cal McCarthy asked that you would once again bring forward the ad hoc subcommittee pertaining to Guilford Industries for the railroad, for the dangerous cars that they leave on the tracks in our city, and they were hoping that you would bring that committee forward. I know Council Eileen Donoghue chaired that and did a great job, but they feel strongly that Guilford Industry doesn't toe the mark, and that subcommittee made them do that. So we'd like to see that happen. Also, Pat Hunt from Centerville would like some answers on the proposed park and lighting at the Christian Hill Reservoir and the funding, and Matt Coggins indicated he would investigate that. Code enforcement and the lack of police presence was the topics discussed the most last evening. And Mr. Man, as you know, it was an open forum. We wanted to discuss recycling, traffic, street repaving, but the Back Central Street representative, the representative from Centerville, and Pawtuckaville indicated that code enforcement, or the lack of, and the lack of police presence in the neighborhoods has them disturbed. Mr. Koch indicated how a gentleman went into Frank and Ernie's variety store, cashed his check, and come out and was held up right outside on the sidewalk. So that is a major, major concern. The Lower Highlands Neighborhood Organization is a huge void there. It's a wonderful neighborhood, but there's no organization, and we have to do everything humanly possible, Mr. Manager, to create an organization, because that's a neighborhood with not major problems, but a lot of problems that we should address. Councilor Broderick and my colleague, Councilor Rita Mercia, was naturally in attendance. Councilor Broderick filed a motion to have quarterly meetings with the neighborhood organizations, starting in January. And if there's any indication that the neighborhood organizations want to get involved, it certainly was apparent last evening. And that motion was passed unanimously. As always, the chairs or the presidents of the neighborhood organizations certainly they do their homework, and Anne Marie Page did her homework, and Mr. Manager, you have a copy of a laundry list that she'd like to have addressed. It was an excellent meeting. It was informative, productive, and I'm looking forward to more meetings. And I want to really thank, I know the subcommittee wants to thank these representatives who work tirelessly to make our city a better place to live, to work, and to educate our children. And if my colleagues would like to also add to this report, feel free to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Mr. J. Mason was there representing Tyler Park.
I'm sorry, I had him written down here.
And,
No, he said
I mean,
it.
there were
He
quite a
said
few reps there, and it was, I thought, a great initial meeting, and the idea of having a quarterly meeting where the neighborhood groups can come back and give specific examples of code violations and trouble spots, hot spots, that one of the recommendations, I think the motion also asked that maybe to have the chief come to hear firsthand, and I think that this can be a great way of getting that interdepartmental attack on gangs and all the other issues that the city's faced with. So I thought it was a great first meeting, but I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a very informative meeting. These are the very people, the neighborhood group leaders that are the pulse of this city. I don't live in a lot of these areas, and they tell us what's going on, and they show us their need, and they keep our feet to the fire, which is great. And we did discuss, through one of the people that attended, was Heritage Drive dead-end sign. Did we do anything with that? And after the meeting was over, she also said, and if we could write this down, that the Glen Road sign is missing, Glenn. Glen Road sign is missing, and it's after Plummer Ave in that area there by Heritage Drive. So if we could put that and have Steve Cooper put that up, that'd be great. But it was a wonderful meeting. I was a little bit disturbed about an issue that most talked about, and that was significantly no response with police calls. That's very troubling to me. I mean, I think that, you know, I don't know if people at the police department think it's not a big deal, but to the person calling it is. And I know we have priorities. I know there's major events happening, but gee, a response to a call is very, very important. I just feel that I don't want to hear that again. I think that's troubling to me. And because it wasn't just one neighborhood group leader, it was quite a few, and I thought that was kind of troubling to me.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank the subcommittee, particularly Councilor Caulfield, for setting up that meeting. I had asked Councilor Caulfield some time ago to help me reach out to the neighborhood groups. As I've indicated to the council, to the public, I think that we need to do all we can to reach out to each one of the neighborhoods of the city to ensure that the services are being delivered. And I share Councilor Mercier's concern regarding the complaints that we heard regarding police response and code enforcement and the like. And it is a good opportunity to get some feedback. I am hoping to have regular dialogues with those neighborhood groups and really use it as a tool to check how we're doing in terms of delivery of services, as well as some of the other actions we're taking. So I wanted to thank the members of the neighborhood group and the members of the subcommittee for having the meeting, and hopefully we can use it, as I say, as a tool to continually improve what we do.
Thank you. And Councilor, as to the request on the subcommittee on the railroads, be happy to reform that. That has been, you know, an issue for far too many years. I know we were hoping maybe for some federal legislation that would give us some more teeth to go after the railroad, which to date has not yet materialized, but we do have the bully pulpit here, and sometimes that is enough to at least encourage some better behavior from the railroad. So be happy to reform that committee. Mr. Manager. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, in pertaining to that particular issue, I do have some background regarding some work that some of the other area communities have done on the issue of idling trains, and I'd be happy to meet with the reform subcommittee to provide that information on some actions that have been taken by the Commonwealth and by those communities.
Okay. All right. Motion to accept the report as a report of progress, placed on file by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The report is accepted. Additional subcommittee reports. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. This is a brief one. We had a subcommittee meeting Monday evening to revisit the additional dwelling unit ordinance, and with recommendation from the planning board after further deliberations at their most current meeting, and suggestion of the DPD was that we withdraw the current ordinance, the proposed ordinance, and send it back to the drawing board. Basically, some of the main concerns from neighborhood groups, the planning board, and Division of Planning and Development was that it would essentially wipe out what we now know as a single-family zone, because it would allow for that particular ordinance, the way it was written, would allow for potentially an unattached dwelling, which is essentially building a second home, regardless of how large or small, on a single-family lot. That wasn't that's not the intent of it. If you look around surrounding towns, that do have the additional dwelling unit ordinance, we far surpass them in subsidized housing and elderly housing. We didn't, at the subcommittee level, feel that it was necessary to push this forward now, but to withdraw it and revisit it with at a later date with more controls if necessary. And Mr. Clerk.
It would be my suggestion, Counselor, where the council voted to recess the hearing until October 3rd, that no action take place until October 3rd. We have to open the hearing, continue the hearing. At that point, we can withdraw the
Okay. All right. I mean, that's essentially it.
Okay.
We'll take it up at the public hearing October 3rd, but that's a recommendation.
Okay. All right. Counselor Elliott?
Thank you. We actually did ask the solicitor, Mr. Clerk, that exact question. What do we do considering we opened the hearing and we closed it? We just recessed it. And she said by simply withdrawal, and I don't know if Ms. O'Connor has spoken to you, but by a withdrawal of the petition and motion, that may satisfy the public hearing that has been set for the 3rd, because we were concerned that people may show up that may not have seen this meeting, but the hearing was advertised, or at least notice was given that it was going to be continued to the 3rd. But is that the case by withdrawing this and withdrawing the motion, or actually the motion is to withdraw the whole petition?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In answer to your question, I would endorse the clerk's recommendation that you keep it until the 3rd, since it was openly continued until that date, and that potentially some members of the public could appear at that time. So I would suggest that you defer any action until October the 3rd.
Okay. I support the recommendation at the subcommittee, which I'm a member, and as the chairman mentioned, it just didn't make sense. They're currently just, for people at home watching, there is a special permit process on the books that if you feel that there is a bona fide need, that you need additional space for a family, in-law, you can go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for permit. And the requirements are in the zoning code, and I don't know what section it was, but there is the requirement you need the additional living space. It has to fit into all the other requirements. You can add a kitchen, a bathroom, again, as long as you have the dimensional requirements and you're not creating another structure. I didn't think it made a lot of sense to support this. In theory, it makes sense that if you need additional space, a detached unit, if you have a garage out back. However, the concern is enforcement. Once the use is no longer needed for an in-law, what happens? Who's going to enforce it? And I don't think people should have to police their backyards for a unit that could be used to generate money for someone that's not an in-law. That was the other point. I think Mr. Lenahan indicated they discussed at the planning board that we have a lot of immigrants, and should they buy a piece of property, who's going to determine the relative status? So there are a whole number of issues that didn't make sense for this that I supported in the subcommittee, and I'll support the withdrawal of it. There are provisions in the existing ordinance that will allow for a need if case may be. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Motion to accept the subcommittee report as a report of progress placed on file by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The report is accepted. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subcommittee on the Stocklosa School met last Thursday evening, I believe. As the council is aware, the subcommittee, and there have been numerous motions referred to the subcommittee over the course of this year. We met we were waiting for a number of responses, and we received a communication from you, Mr. Manager, dated September 8th, asking for the opportunity to address the subcommittee, recognizing full well that you're new to this problem, but a problem that's been in existence for some time now. Just by way of background, and I guess I'll start at the end, and that is a motion was made by Councilor Elliott, a member of the subcommittee, as well as Councilor Caulfield, a member of the subcommittee. Councilor Elliott made a motion that the manager respond to all the outstanding motions that have been referred to the subcommittee concerning the Stocklosa School, actually dating back to February of 2006. Those motions are numerous, and I told you, Mr. Manager, I'll provide you with copies of them. You may have them by now, but just by way of background as to where we stand here, the subcommittee has been meeting for months now, trying to determine where we stand with the Stocklosa School. There are a number of issues, including punch list of items still to be completed at the school, where we stand with the insurance company, the contractor, Jackson Construction, basically is not involved in the project now. The bonding company, or Travelers Insurance, is now handling the negotiations with the city, trying to wrap up this project. There are issues still concerning the $290,000 settlement or payment that the city made to Jackson Construction last May of 2005, which we have been waiting for proof of what we paid them for since May of 2005, which we still have not seen. And quite frankly, these are complicated issues, and many of them, if not all of them. Starting with the $290,000 payment, which took up quite a bit of the discussion at the subcommittee. There was a motion referred to the manager on February 7th as a result of the subcommittee meeting on February 7th, 2006, requesting information from the law department on the $290,000 payment to Jackson, and to provide the subcommittee with a copy of settlement documents as well as the status of the city's claim for delay by Jackson Construction. With regard to that motion, again, going back to February of this year, we have been given information and status reports from the law department as to negotiations up until, let's say, May or June of this year. I know the law department was awaiting information from it was Jackson and then Travelers Insurance as to what we paid them for the year before. There was a lot of discussion as to whether we should have even paid them anything, but for purposes of the motion, a settlement agreement was signed, a release was given to Jackson, but there was a proviso in that release that said Jackson had to cooperate and give us documentation as to what we were paying them for. The subcommittee has not seen that documentation. We've seen summary sheets provided by the contractor, which means nothing as far as the subcommittee is concerned. Despite months and months of request, Jackson, or now their agent, whether it be Travelers or whomever, has failed to comply with the settlement agreement. At least that's a view that was discussed at the subcommittee. And so that motion, Mr. Manager, we're looking for a response to. If indeed Jackson has breached the agreement, then a motion was made. This was a motion made, and it's related to the $290,000 by Councilor Broderick, and I believe that motion was made on June 27th of 2006, asking the city to report in the law department and to pursue the $290,000 from the monies that we still hold. We're still holding 1.1 million or 1.2 million, I believe, of monies that are owed to Jackson. And if we have a claim for those monies, then the subcommittee discussed and would like the administration to pursue any and all means to recoup those monies. That was one motion. And I understand, Mr. Manager, coming on the scene at this point, you haven't had ample opportunity to come up to speed on what has been a very complicated project, but that was one. The other motion that we are asking for a response, and this goes back to February, was a report on the status of the punch list at the school. What still has to be done? We were told that the amount of the punch list right now is down to about $158,000 worth of work. There's analysis being done to determine whether DPW will do some of the work, whether the insurance company is going to pick up the tab. But what we would like is to get some final information, numbers, timeline as to when that punch list is going to be completed. It should be noted that the HVAC system is not included in that $158,000 figure, and that's been a big problem at the Stocklosa School. We also asked for a report as to what's going on with the HVAC, where the warranties, who's addressing these issues, and so forth. We also asked for a report on the work that the city did in order to get the Stocklosa School opened last fall. As I know members of the subcommittee and the council may recall, the city went ahead just to try and expedite opening of the school and sent city workers over there doing landscaping and so forth, and paving, I believe. And what we're looking to see is where's the credit to the city. Jay Lang from the school department was present at the subcommittee meeting. He said that there was a figure, and I believe the figure he thought, though he was going to check exactly, was about $80,000. We want to see specifically that money comes back. If it hasn't been credited, does it come out of the 1.1 million? You know, these are significant issues that we want to get some answers on, put it to rest, and so that we can all move forward. Another request was that we be, and this goes to the, I believe, a motion that was made on March 14th of this year. All of these motions were either not answered in whole or in part, and so we're asking now that they be answered, Mr. Manager. The motion that was, I believe, was also by Councilor Broderick, that we be provided a timeline of this project. In order to make recommendations and to pursue any and all remedies that the city has, the council or the subcommittee feels that we need a timeline from the city as to what happened, when it happened, so that we have a clear understanding. Despite the hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation that we've been provided, that I've reviewed, that I know my colleagues have reviewed, it is completely unclear as to what is the real timeline on this project. We were provided a timeline that the contractor prepared, which quite frankly, the subcommittee or let me say that it was clearly a self-serving document and not what was requested by the motion. So we would look to, if it can be, provide us a timeline as to what happened and when it did, so that we can really assess what our rights are at this point. Another motion that was made, and again, we're waiting for a report. This is from you as well as from the auditor, Mr. Manager. This was a motion made on August 8th of 2006. Again, I believe it was Councilor Broderick's motion, to request a report on the $1 million bond and the current status regarding that. That bond, let me just say by way of clarification, when this project first was put out to bid, there was a shortfall, and in other words, it was going to, we needed to raise more money than we had originally authorized. There was at one point a $1.2 million additional bonding added to the bond and the cost of the Stocklosa School. Thereafter, in the fall of 2004, when it became apparent that we needed to add more money because of the 3 classrooms, and without belaboring the discussion at this point, right now we're looking for facts to go back to the subcommittee, but there were, in the record, requests that we would authorize $1 million additional bonding at that point, that we would get whatever work was done to get the school open, and that we would reserve all our rights against the contractor to be slugged out in court or wherever at a later date. We all know now that that didn't happen. We didn't reserve our rights, and we settled with the contractor, and that's what all this inquiry is about. But the $1 million bond is the issue, and what we're looking for is an accounting. Now, we know $290,000 was paid to Jackson on May 27, 2005. We don't know where the rest of the money is, and that's important. And so we are looking for a full accounting of all those monies relating to, again, not the $1.2 million additional bond, but the $1 million additional bond that happened in October of 2004. That was another motion that we're looking for a response to. Another motion, again, that I believe has been provided, but this goes to the February request information regarding site preparation and environmental work and payment for the same, including the source of the payments. The reason that motion is again being provided and asked for a response, Mr. Manager, is it's difficult to look at one piece of this financial puzzle without looking at all of the pieces together. And so it only makes sense to get a full financial breakdown so that we can clearly assess what monies may be owed to the city. And that's what this is all about, is trying to recoup monies that the city may have overpaid, that the city, that Jackson is not entitled to, while we still are holding monies belonging to Jackson. The last motion that was made, this goes to the February 7th, 2006 subcommittee, was to request, we actually got an opinion, this is one that we did get a partial response, request that Mr. Ed Souza, who was the project manager, and as well as the architect, be present or to add a subcommittee meeting to answer questions of the subcommittee. We were provided with a response from the law department, essentially talking about, we can't, we do have subpoena power, actually, of the subcommittee, whether or not there would be any issues in terms of law and so forth. And the upshot was that the individuals could be invited to the subcommittee. Councilor Elliott made a motion at the subcommittee that all of those motions be answered by you in reasonable time, what time that you need to do that, and that all of the answers be provided to the subcommittee and the council as a whole, and that the matter come back to the subcommittee in whatever time you need to answer these, Mr. Manager. That was the nature of the meeting, and we appreciate the fact that you asked to address it with the subcommittee. You may regret that you are taking this on, but these things have to be answered. They pose serious questions about monies that right now we need every dollar we can get, and if there are monies owed to the city, then that's what this has been about since day one, is to try and pursue those monies. Contrary to assertions that may have been made that the council is not interested in this or has dropped it, nothing could be further from the truth, as can be seen from the multiple motions that have been filed and unanswered for months now. So we look forward to your report.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, to the councilor's report and the subcommittee report, I did ask for a meeting with the subcommittee to bring the subcommittee up to date on the status as I knew it, based upon the work of the city solicitor, and trying to get a handle on this particular issue. As I indicated at the subcommittee meeting, it is a quite a project certainly with a long history and a very confusing past. And it is going to take some time and some work to pull all that information together, but I do think that it is important work that needs to be done to understand exactly what happened, to make any corrections that need to be made or can be made, and really to provide the public with a full understanding of in a sense that we've done our due diligence in looking at this project. So I am moving forward with the request of the subcommittee, working with staff, and in all likelihood bringing in some outside assistance to get to the bottom of that in terms of the legal issues and the accounting issues that may be at stake here. And I hope to have that report to the subcommittee within the next several weeks in order to provide some guidance moving forward with this particular project.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adopt the report and recommendation of the subcommittee by Councilor Ramirez, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? That motion is adopted. Councilor Elliott, you have a new subcommittee report, or you want to?
I do have a subcommittee, but I just want to speak on this briefly. Councilor Dunn, you really gave a lengthy and accurate description of the subcommittee, but I tell you, prior to, I was the chair at one time, so that goes to show you how long we've been trying to get our hands around this, and this has been one of the most frustrating experiences that I have had sitting in this council. I continue to maintain that we paid $290,000 for something that was already in the contract that we should not have paid. We have letters from the contractor saying it'll cost you $75,000 to put these classrooms back in at that point in time. And we've spent, as Councilor Dunny's mentioned, months. And I can tell you, I don't have any more of a clearer understanding what took place with the construction of this school than I did from the first day that we sat down at the meeting trying to get and understand where the deficit was, where did it come from, what did we pay for site excavation, where are the contamination costs, where are the additional construction costs. What I do know is that the construction company signed a contract to build a school for $17,095,000, and they were obligated to pay for it. Now, whether there was a shortfall on the authorization from the council has nothing to do with this company. They were obligated to give us the school that they bid on, that was designed to certain specifications, and they should have delivered. This $290,000 is a red herring, and this project, it's a beautiful school, but the taxpayers of this city did not get what we paid for. And this subcommittee, and we're gonna stay the course in this because we have an obligation, and there's not one of us that are convinced that we should have paid that $290,000. Now, it's a big puzzle because there's so many change orders, signed, unsigned, authorized, unauthorized, that we can't even get a straight line of what the schedule was or when what change order was signed for what. We got a response from the contractor several months ago that was a joke, in my opinion. Anybody could have plugged the figure into that response that we asked for. What did we get for $290,000? And we have had so many motions, but we're going to get to the answers. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and we're going to find out where that $290,000 went. I support the motions, and I did make the motion to get Mr. Souza. We don't even have the people in the room that were on top of the project. Our architect, nor the project manager. And we need to get them in to say, what happened? Where did it fall apart? And why are we in the state that we are? The school's not even complete. Mr. Auditor, how much do we still owe? What did we hold back from the company? And this is irrespective of what we're going after the insurance company. What does the city still hold back in this project?
Around $881,000.
And what do we have in outstanding bills that are still being held to pay?
The only bills that I have downstairs is for S&R, which we haven't paid, and I know they have some bills upstairs in the law office, but I don't know what they are.
This wasn't in the form of a motion, but I just want to remind you, in a subcommittee meeting, I would like to know what was expended up to the date prior to signing of that contract with Jackson Construction, because that's an important sort of benchmark that, okay, this is what we authorized, this is what we spent up to date, and this was remaining in this, and we should have, but that subcommittee should have been known at that, should have been notified at that point, this is how much we spent, this is how much I have available, and we shouldn't have signed that contract until we had enough money instead of backtracking. So there's a lot of answers that we still have not gotten. It's unfortunate. I don't understand why. If this was such a clear-cut, simple case, we'd be able to find the schedule, the timeline, and the costs associated with this. But for some reason, we can't. But I support all the motions and look forward to getting a report from the manager.
Okay. Thank you. Further subcommittee reports? Councilor Elliott?
Finance Subcommittee met this evening, and we met regarding three issues. One is the FY05 audit. Mr. Sullivan, the independent auditor, was there, and he gave us a report on the 05 audit. He gave us a report on 06. We're already, just for people at home, we're in fiscal year 07. So we're talking about an audit for 05, which is 05 and 06. We're already into 06 because the Department of Revenue is requiring, before they certify any tax rate, that we have a complete audit submitted to them. It's which is not a typical practice. Typically, we get our financials in, we get our property valuation done, we get our tax recap sheet in, our Schedule A, and then the tax recap sheet. But because of the concerns that they have with the way the financial issues have been handled, they are going to require that. Mr. Manager, I will let you elaborate on FY07. You put together the spreadsheet. There was an article in the paper that indicated that we're in a little bit better condition, but if you want to give a brief synopsis of the work that you did, we still have a significant deficit. We still have a ways to go. We didn't get into those options yet. I anticipate we'll do that at the next meeting. So if you would like to go into that, then we'll just jump back to 05 and 06 and give a brief description of where we're at on that.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Councilor, I did try to give a breakdown to the subcommittee before the met earlier tonight on where we are with fiscal year 07. And as you've pointed out, the picture that I have now is a little bit better than we were about a month ago. And I'm hoping that over time we can squeeze it down more. If you recall, back in August, I had indicated that coming in, I had we were closing out the books for fiscal year 06, and I'd identified what appeared to be a $6.3 million shortfall for fiscal year 07, and that really came from a number of different areas. One was that the budget that had been passed by the City Council back in June had anticipated that we would be receiving, we'd be able to count on $42 million of local receipts. When we closed fiscal year 06, in fact, we did not hit that $42 million number. We only hit $40,250,000. The Department of Revenue generally, as a practice, requires that you use the amount that you had received the prior year unless you can somehow substantiate some changed circumstances like increase in fees or missed excise tax bills or something of that sort. But looking at the numbers preliminarily, it certainly appeared to me that the more appropriate response was to count on that number that we'd received in fiscal year 06. The other major change that from one year to the next, from June till August, was that the council had voted a budget that had counted on $3.5 million in free cash. I indicated back in August, and I will reiterate it again now, I don't think it's good practice to utilize free cash in your operating budget. Free cash is essentially budget surplus. It's one-time in nature. You shouldn't use it in your operating budget. But I certainly am concerned that the City Council, and I understand this has been the practice of the city for some time, had made an estimate of free cash apparently in the spring, winter-spring, of what it would have at the end of June 30th. And instead of $3.5 million, we were looking in August at about $500,000. We're now looking at about $660,000, but certainly a far cry from the $3.5 million that the budget had anticipated would be on hand on June 30th. We also had a snow and ice deficit that, of $1.25 million that, again, was known in June but was not counted in as an expense in the budget that you approved at that time. So all in all, when it all added up and some anticipated increase in some costs due to energy costs that unfortunately were not adjusted for the new realities when you approved the budget back in June. All in all, it came to a $6.3 million shortfall. That has improved by about $1 million, and I'd just like to touch upon the areas that I've made some changes in this particular spreadsheet that show that the shortfall now is, I'm counting at about $5.2 million, and I'm working to bring that down even more, certainly as much as possible. We are anticipating now about $400,000 more in new growth in our local taxes, largely in part to the work of the assessors in getting a better handle on the personal property within the city that owned by the businesses of the community. That is an effort that has been underway now for a period of time, utilizing an outside service to assist in that process. So that's certainly an increase in those local revenues that will not impact the general taxpayer of the city. In terms of our local receipts, I am estimating right now that will be able to increase by about $500,000. I think there was an article in the local newspaper that we were very fortunate that one of our generating plants recently sold. As a result of that sale, we were able to enforce the payment of the payment in lieu of taxes agreement that we have. That was about $1.9 million, representing 4 years' worth of back payments due to the city. So that came in late August, early September. So that's certainly positive news for us in terms of our overall financial condition. It also allows us now to make a case to the Department of Revenue, as I indicated earlier, in looking at our local receipts. We can make a case now that we're back on track receiving that payment in lieu of taxes, which is about $500,000 a year. So I feel comfortable that we can go to them and ask the Department of Revenue to allow us to count on that $500,000 for fiscal year 07 that did not take place in fiscal year 06 or 05. So that's positive. The remaining, the money that's in hand, the 1.9, will be very helpful to us as we move forward through fiscal year 07 to help us cover any potential shortfalls that may occur during the year in some of our other revenue sources, which is commonplace. It's my opinion that, one, it's not good practice to use that $1.9 million because it's not going to be repeated in the future. We'd just be reinforcing the structural deficit problem that we have in the city, is highlighted by our auditor earlier tonight, and highlighted by Moody's, and highlighted by the Department of Revenue, and highlighted by myself in speaking to the council. But in addition to just being a bad practice, it's not allowed. The Department of Revenue will not allow us to take in a receipt that occurred so late after the close of the prior fiscal year. Certainly given their concern about the deficit problems here in the city, they would certainly not allow us to do that. So that money is not available for this year, but it will prove very helpful as we close out fiscal year 07. The other change that's taken place in the budget is the regional school budget assessment has decreased as a result of some additional money that the state has provided to the vocational school for transportation, so that's about $200,000. So all told, we're down to about $5.2 million shortfall that we still have to close between now and the end of this, by December really, when the council needs to vote the tax rate. I am looking at a number of areas in our fees that we can try to generate some additional revenues, looking at some reductions in some of our costs that we may be able to make, particularly in the area of energy, and perhaps some of our medical costs, although I have to tell you that I am concerned, as I indicated in prior meetings, regarding the employee benefit costs that we have and whether we have adequate funds in our trust fund. But working with our consultant, we're trying to address that problem as well. So it's a little bit better news. I am hopeful that within the next month I'll be able to close that up more and come back to the council, the subcommittee, and then the council at that time with a final condition for where we are in fiscal year '07.
Council, I believe Council Elliott still has the floor in the subcommittee report.
I do, but maybe if there is discussion on the FY07 budget situation, Mr. Mayor, maybe we should let members have those discussions, and we'll go back to the audit statements, because they're separate, and it might make for a better discussion.
Okay. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very brief. I just, in all due respect to the Cox administration, Mr. Manager, they worked tirelessly and long and hard for the developers of Linegear to pay the city that $1.9 million, and we're going to receive $500,000 in future years. So I just want to give credit to the Cox administration for that $1.9 million.
Councilor Donahue.
What did they do? I mean, it's sold. Isn't that why we got paid?
Yeah, that's why
Did
we
they
received
buy it? I mean, what did they do? Property transferred and we got paid a one-time payment, right?
That's correct.
All right.
It was sold, but the negotiations were going on for months.
Well, I should hope the city didn't negotiate a deal between two private parties. I should hope that didn't happen, or we'll be dealing with another problem.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That is 07, which will lead me to the manager has set up a meeting with the Department of Revenue to discuss not only FY07 issues, but also some audit findings from FY05 and 06. We did ask the auditor and the manager why the delay took place, why are we only getting FY07. Mr. Sullivan did indicate in the management letter that he did complete his field audit, and findings were, he did as much as he could up to November 7th of 05. And the reason for the delay were twofold. One, an audit from the Songus Arena, and the second one was fixed asset inventory that the company that was hired, the person apparently left the company, and there was a delay. So those were two issues. You can't, under GASB 34, you cannot complete an audit unless there is, this was a revaluation year, and we had to update our fixed assets, and we could not do that according to the auditor. The company we hired the year before performed accordingly, but this year the person apparently left the company, and we could not finish it, and that was the delay. That will not happen this year because it's not a revaluation year. We've already undertaken, the Powers and Sullivan Certified Public Accountants have already started the 06 budget, again because the OR will require it before we can set a tax rate, and that's critical. They're 1 week into it, books have closed. I will say Mr. Fernandez has completed the Schedule A and submitted to the Department of Revenue in September, so it goes to show you that we can do this earlier. We close the books, we do the Schedule A, it has to be submitted for review, and that's a good sign. So there are a number of findings that took place. I guess Mr. Sullivan did indicate he was concerned mostly about the number of recommendations from prior years, that prior year comments, recommendations that just continue to carry from 1 year to the next with no resolve. The managers, I think, understands clearly that we need sort of a checklist from year to year. What is missing is a management response in these letters that the city managers indicate that once recommendations are made from the audit, that they're cleared up between fiscal years, and that's a practice that needs to be done. They shouldn't be carried from year to year. We have every year we do get these reports. We hold meetings, and we're told that actions are going to take place. Maybe we can get a report, Mr. Manager, from on those issues from reconciliation to cash. Section 108's been carrying since '03. There are issues in the Treasurer's office, not only staff, but operational. We have to preserve the integrity of the financial system, and that's what these recommendations are for. And the manager is committed that he's going to work and give us an update when these issues are resolved. Would you like to respond, Mr. Manager?
I would, Counselor. I just wanted to reiterate that and reinforce what you've stated. It is very concerning to me that there have been these management letters that have been issued, and there hasn't been a management response to the findings. That's standard practice, that management explains how they're going to clear up the finding. The other issue is that there are findings that are carried on from year to year to year, and that indicates that improvements aren't being made in the processes that manage the city's resources, the city's finances. So I made a commitment to the subcommittee and to the council now that we are going to sit down with the finance team of the city and the relevant departments to address those issues, because they do reflect some weaknesses in our internal controls and weaknesses in our financial systems that should have been addressed. And as I also indicated to the subcommittee, I have taken up the offer of the Department of Revenue to come in and provide a full financial management review that will hopefully also address many of the potential deficiencies in our operations. So we will be doing that as well.
Well, it all plays together. DOR wants to see that our books are in order. It's important that we keep track and that we have a good financial system in order to make sure we're tracking our revenues and our expenditures. And thirdly, that was indicated that our financial advisors look at the management letters, and they look at our audited financial statements, and that has an impact on our bond rating, which has an impact on how much it costs us, the interest rate to go out for long-term notes. So that's the report. We're going to meet as soon as the manager has met with DOR, going to come back with 07 issues, 06, and give us an update where we are with trying to address these recommendations that affect the finances.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, and thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Motion to accept the report as a report of progress by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? The subcommittee report is accepted. Any further subcommittee reports? Councilor Milanazzo.
I actually don't have a subcommittee report, but if I could, I'd just like to state that we received a lot of good information tonight, beginning with the Neighborhood Traffic Subcommittee, going to zoning, going to the Start Closer School, finance audit. I guess I'm inquiring as to what's the status of putting these subcommittee meetings on television. We did vote to do that the request, I believe, was Councilor Ramirez's motion. And again, I thought the subcommittee meetings were going to be televised. And again, we get a lot of good information at this meeting, but again, it was supposed to be more transparency, if you will, in government. So I'd be looking to get an update on, as to the status of that.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
In response, Councilor, I was not aware of that motion, but I will follow up with the telecommunications, telemedia, and take the necessary steps to have that to occur.
Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. I did have conversations recently with the clerk who had been in touch with LTC, and I think LTC at one point indicated it would be easier if it was a Tuesday night. The problem with that is it's very difficult. I mean, sometimes you can have a subcommittee that will conclude by 6:30, but realistically, if they need one set night, and if the council knows what that night is, be it Monday night or what have you, I mean, we have a logistical problem in that, this room is used for, other things on Monday night, and the planning board and the zoning board now are being televised. But somehow there's got to be a way of coming up with a scheduled time that, subcommittees know that they can schedule a televised meeting, because I do think it's important. But we need really better communication from LTC to get that done.
Okay, we have two petitions, one from Verizon requesting 5 feet of conduit in Middlesex Street, 260 feet in Jackson Street, and a petition from National Grid, approximately 25 feet of conduit in Tanner Street. Those matters are to be referred to a public hearing on October 10th. So moved by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor of referring those two matters to a public hearing, or three matters, I'm sorry, to a public hearing on October 10th, say aye. Any opposed? Those matters will be set for public hearing October 10th. We have 3 claims for property damage to be referred to the Law Department. So moved by Councilor Milanazzo, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Those matters are referred to the Law Department. Under motions, the first motion is a joint motion by Councilors Broderick and Ramirez. The City Council requests the City Manager contact local delegation and request they meet with the Judicial Subcommittee to discuss plans for a new judicial center. Seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. Who's first?
All right.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. This was a joint motion by Councilor Ramirez and myself. We're on the subcommittee and thought there was a nice article, I think it was last week, relative to the funding and moving the state's plans to move forward. And I haven't been involved in any meetings on it yet. I thought it'd be a good idea for to invite the delegation to come in and explain to us what the plans are, timetable, the city, what's expected of the city. I assume we'd have something in the way of takings, hopefully friendly takings, and try to get on the same page so that this can move as quickly as hopefully the state can push it.
Thank you. Councilor Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly the motion is timely. The delegation worked very hard to get that money, and what we don't want to do is deliberate much longer because that facility can spur some economic growth. Also, we want to make sure that the Davis location really is going to be the place. I don't know that there's been changes, but I know there's been a lot of talk about the flood and the effect it had on that parking lot. And so it's just a good way to come together and move forward as a group. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a meeting set up with the delegation to go over a number of issues, including the Judicial Center, and at that time I'll sort of get a summary of the status and set up the meeting with the subcommittee.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Broderick. Request the City Council set and implement the process for advertising and hiring of a new city auditor. Seconded by Councilor Elliott. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we all know, the auditor has notified us that he's not going to be seeking reappointment in February. And the motion basically is, I don't know what the process was for the last hiring. I wasn't around. But I thought it would be a good idea to get it, to set a process, and then to probably it would make sense to get started. I don't know how long it's going to take. I assume we'd want to do a similar search as we did for the city manager. May not be as lucky to find someone right next door. It may take some time, and then deal with the issue of how to make the transition, because it's an important position, and I think that it may take a little more time than we necessarily think it will. And we want to make sure whoever comes in hits the ground with on their feet, and we're all set, because once we finish with the audit, we're going to be looking at budget issues and other issues that we have to make sure we're prepared for.
Okay, thank you. Would it make sense, Councilor, to refer this motion to the Audit Oversight Subcommittee, have the subcommittee bring back a set of recommendations as to how you want to proceed, or is that
sure
necessary?
I didn't make it that way because I'm on it. But.
Councilor Donahue?
Thank you. I think that makes perfect sense. I think in advance, maybe we can be provided information from Kathy Tierney, for example, what were the advertising requirements and so forth the last time we did this, similar to what we did for the manager. But we also may want to update through Mass Municipal as far as, salary ranges, in terms of like size communities and so forth. It's been so we want to just get a full update as to that information. So, I think that makes sense, but I don't even know if I'm on that subcommittee, but at any rate, I think if the subcommittee could get that information ahead of time, it would be helpful.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Next motion is by Councilor Broderick. City Council requests the city manager present a policy for permit fees for private parties in city parks and city services provided for the same. Seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. This obviously has gotten some attention in the local newspaper, and this is not an intent to bring anybody forward as in any way, but essentially, now that it's out there and we know and we're aware of it, I think that we need to have some type of policy in place to deal with several issues. Whether or not a fee should be implemented. You know, I don't know what kind of events we've been giving permits for. If it's a quick ceremony saying, giving someone taking an oath, or if it's set up tents, tables, and they have exclusive use of a park for 2 or 3 hours. There's a big difference, obviously. I think that if it's a latter, if it's someone that's going to be basically using the park at the exclusion of the rest of the city, and there's going to be obviously some maintenance and wear and tear in addition to what the average day would bring. Anybody that's had a 150 or 100 guests in their backyard can attest to that the next morning when they wake up and they look and they say, oh my goodness, you know, and there's going to be wear and tear. So I mentioned, you know, a nominal fee. Obviously, Mr. Manager, I'd be looking for you to, you know, get with Mr. Bellegarde and whoever and decide what would constitute, what's justified. This isn't intended to be a moneymaker or punish people so that they don't do it, but we've invested, I think, $668,000 we've slated for to invest in our parks, hopefully another $700,000 in grant money that we're going to try and get for a spray park over at Shed. You know, I'd be the first one to sign up for a permit for that for my son's birthday. You know, I think we need to establish what parks are going to be available for what permits and what use. And a big one that was brought up before by Councilor Elliott was deposits. You know, if we're going to do this, who's cleaning up? And what guarantee do we have that it's going to be cleaned up? This was back for a basketball court. From out of town, people are coming in, renting, permitting a basketball court for a tournament. So I think we need to, it at least needs to be discussed and addressed. What's a reasonable deposit so that we're not sending city workers out every Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Monday morning, cleaning up after people's parties. People want to have a birthday party, that's wonderful. That's what the parks are for. But I think that it's not fair for everybody in the city to pay for other people's private parties. Those are a few of the issues. There's also an issue that was brought up that I was totally unaware of, as well as providing city equipment, tables, chairs, tents. I understand Mr. Bellegarde is stated that he thinks it probably should change the policy. Providing them for free, I think, is a mistake, obviously. I don't think we should lease them or provide them for fee at all. And that's just my opinion. I think that we're opening ourselves up to tremendous liability. We're going to have, first off, city workers. We're going to, you know, I guess we could give a bill to whoever's responsible for the party. But, you know, my 400-pound uncle sits on a chair and breaks it. Guess who owns that problem? The city. It's their chair. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't adequate, or it was malfunctioned. Someone sets up a tent and there's a problem with it. Now the city owns it because we negligently set up a tent. I think it's a mistake. I know we do it for some of the nonprofits and some of the city-sponsored city-sponsored organizations and events, but I don't think we should be doing it for private parties, for anybody. I just think that it's business as well. I know it was brought up as some of the downtown business, you know, and then we start deciding who can have it and who can't, because now that everybody knows, everybody's going to be asking. So we could conceivably have parks that are going to be booked, and now people that live in the neighborhood can't use them. I think that for these issues, the main thing, hopefully I got it all in here, trying to be brief, you know, is basically what fee would be appropriate, if any. Definitely a deposit. Whether we have a fee or not, I think we need a deposit to make sure that there's no damage and that it's cleaned up, and then address what the permits are for and at what parks. I mean, I drive by Kittredge Park and people are getting their, you know, you see wedding parties over getting a photograph. Obviously, that's great. I wouldn't expect we need a permit to go get your picture taken, or, you know, to have a meeting. But I think if you're going to use it exclusively so that others can't, and you have a permit that you can say you can't use the basketball court, you can't use the baseball court, baseball field, or you can't use Kittredge Park, then there has to be some kind of a fee for that. That basically, I think that does it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ramirez.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Councilor Broderick. I think the motion is timely. I think that we're at a situation where it's time to revisit a policy and put one in place, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with a fee to recoup money spent on overtime for our workers. And maybe the legal side of me says, you know, what's our exposure to the city if somebody does get hurt on the premises? Now, we don't want that, and I would never want to discourage anybody from using our open space, but I think that whether we end up putting a fee structure in place or not, I think this is an excellent opportunity for us to take a look at and assess it, and I agree with you, Mr. Manager, it's just time to take a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree there is concern with everyone wanting to monopolize our Parks Department crew for help when borrowing chairs and tables. On occasion, I have asked for tables for the Lowell Community Health Center, who offers medical assistance for the fiscally strapped residents of our city. I have I am in need of Parks Department help again. I need help with them for our Friends of the Council on Aging. They're holding a yard sale fundraising effort for our seniors on this Saturday, October 7th, from 9 to 3. Thank you for letting me get this little plug in. This will be on the grounds of the Senior Center. And I don't know if anybody has a problem with that. Maybe you don't want me to ask for any tables or any help for a sponsored event for our seniors that we don't have enough money on our budget for. So I don't know what to do but to ask anyways and hope that I can get some tables and some chairs and hope that the park department can bring them there. But I would be amenable to set a policy in place to see who can take part in this services. Perhaps the businesses for profit wouldn't need any help anymore. But I thought there was a motion a while back to block off the streets and have it, and I thought that we offered our help from the Parks Department to set up, different things over there for them to make things happen for them. I thought this was a venture with the city as a partnership to kind of help. I know now that maybe our Parks Department's doing too much, but who do we pick and choose? I don't know. What businesses get help, or who do we exclude? Do we exclude the for-profit businesses? Because downtown, I'm understanding we're trying to help them, but they are for-profit. But I would not be in favor of charging people to have a birthday party or a wedding in a city park. I believe that they already pay for this service in the form of taxes. They have every right to use what they so adequately support already. I would support a free permit, which would only make sure that two parties don't show up at the same time, so it would be a permit for scheduling purposes only. Now, we've already had 11 birthdays or weddings altogether. If we, let's say, ask $10 for the permit, that would generate $110. Is that going to make a big difference in our $281 million budget? I don't know. Maybe we could charge parents for letting kids sled down Christian Hill or Fort Hill or whatever. I don't know. If we have 15 events and we're charging $20 per event, that's $300. I don't know. But maybe we can charge people to have weddings at a park if they're not Lowellians. I don't know where you want to go with this, but for the record, I want to state, because a lot of the focus was on a wedding that I performed at Muldoon Park. So for the record, let me state that the tent that was there, the chairs that were there, were all paid for by Mr. Frank Muldoon and his family. As far as pickup or cleanup, the wedding service only took less than a half an hour. I'm sure we didn't track it with 100 people like a herd of cattle. We weren't there selling ice cream or popcorn or making hot dogs or whatever. We were there having a decent ceremony, and when we left, the sister of the bride picked up what was left: flowers, candles, and whatever else she had to do, she cleaned it up herself. Did the Parks Department help? And they were not on overtime. They were helping to take the white chairs, which didn't belong to the city. They belonged to the rental company, and they offered Mr. Muldoon help, probably because he worked for just 22 years in the city, and I thought maybe they were his comrades. They worked with him. They showed a good interest in someone that they had cared about for so many years, who probably would have bent over backwards for helping them as well. Should his family have paid a fee? I don't think so. He took a dilapidated area, and I wish I could have seen it, Manager Lynch, and seen that cars were abandoned in that area. My very first motion 11 years ago was to put a light to illuminate it so they wouldn't have so many drug transactions going on in that dilapidated piece of swill that we called abandoned property. And to look at the transformation today at the urgency of the very man that had the wedding for his daughter. Be that as it may, we're talking about maybe we should have charged the Judge family over at Tyler Park, who for 35 years, Bernie Judge, has been instrumental in working for Mass Electric and having telephone poles installed in all the parks and illuminating and adding light to our parks for our children so that they could see, all on his own time, all at his own expense, with a number of friends, day in and day out. I thought maybe that was a nice gesture to not offer him a fee and just to let him have his daughter married there, because the bride's mother was none other than Nancy Judge, who is the president of her neighborhood group, who has urged the city through grants to try to get a grant to make that a passive, beautiful park, which it is, who has concerts in the park and does so much of her own free time. I don't know where we're going with this, but it seemed like these two families were targeted, and I'm embarrassed to say that they were targeted. That's a disgrace. There was no other pressing stories for the day, so we had to focus on people that did not pay a fee to go to that park, but have volunteered their time and time again to make this the best city that it can be. The very person, and I'm going to talk about Frank Muldoon a little bit longer, because we were all there some time ago when he was very instrumental up on 3rd Street to make that Mount Vernon Park a pillar of that neighborhood, with the gazebo and lighting, and transformed a drab area that you just go by without even noticing to a luxurious piece of park, passive park area, who has transformed islands from Washington Park to Lincoln Parkway, and has for many years before it was ever transformed, cut the grass himself. He has literally 5 islands that he takes care of himself, and we have to focus attention and shine a spotlight that, my God, the city helped this man. If he was reimbursed for all the hours of work that he has volunteered for this city, you couldn't even imagine the dedication that these families that I'm talking about. I'm embarrassed to think that we even stooped so low to do a story. Maybe it did bring a need that we should revisit this and look and see how we can generate more money, but to have tied it in with families that have given so much of their time, unlike many others, I don't know. I'm just embarrassed. But we will revisit this. If that's what you want to do, raise money. I don't know how much more money we can talk about. Maybe we should see all the people that are serving on boards and commissions and see how much that money is generated for health insurance, and see if perhaps people are so in tune to see what everybody else is doing. Maybe we can see just why people want to be on boards and commissions. Is it for the health insurance that maybe if we eliminate that, we can see who really is devoted? Because I know that Bernie Judge, not Bernie
Councilor,
Lynch, but-
that's really off the topic.
No,
I mean,
it isn't off the topic. The topic is we're trying to generate fees. Maybe that's a way we can generate fees.
It's about
Maybe we
use
can
of city parks.
obliterate fines.
It's not about raising fees.
It's about-
Health insurance.
Can I respond?
Councilor Caulfield had his hand up, then Councilor Broderick, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're right, Councilor Broderick. Your motion has brought much attention throughout the city. 20 years ago, Mr. Lynch, you couldn't pay anyone to get married in one of our parks. Now we're looking to charge people to get married in our beautiful parks. Kittredge Park, Tyler Park, Hartford Square, Muldoon Park. They're all flourishing because volunteers and citizens of those neighborhoods came forward I know Councilor Donohue has worked extremely hard in Kittredge Park, have come forward to beautify and to make that parcel of land a beacon in their neighborhood. I don't want to belabor the issue. I am not going to support this. We already have a fee in place, Mr. Manager, to send our children to school, to use the roads and sidewalks, and yes, to use our public parks. It's called taxes. It's the people's park. If a non-resident wants to come in here, into our city, they get married at Kittredge Park, get married at Muldoon Park, Tyler Park, there probably should be a fee for that. If a resident or a non-resident wants to have a permit for our park for a birthday or a wedding, and they require city services, yes, they should pay for those city services. But to have a bride and a groom honor us with their marriage in one of our parks, it's a slap in the face to say we're going to charge you $10, or maybe it's $20, or maybe $30. Where are we going with this? I just want to elaborate just a little bit on that barren piece of soil on Barica Street, where for years it was nothing more but a catch-all for tires, shopping baskets, any paraphernalia you can think of, junk, debris. Mr. Muldoon had a vision to beautify that neighborhood. Not only did he beautify the neighborhood, but he brought the values of the property up as well. Kittredge Park, the same thing. Tyler Park, Walter Bayless brings his popcorn machine there every Thursday evening. There's concerts on Tyler Park. You know what? There's no fee for that. People enjoy the park. They bring their chairs. That's what it's for. That's what it's for. We have a deficit. There was 15 permits issued last year for weddings and a birthday. I believe a gentleman had a birthday party at Shed Park. His daughter. And it was very successful. We're going to charge that man a fee for that? It's, you know, Councilor, your motion has brought attention to many people in the city, many, and they're not happy about it. Thank you.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. I guess, I don't know if people weren't listening when I started off, the premise of this was to establish a procedure and a policy whether or not we should charge a fee. I haven't used a number. It wasn't to raise revenue, okay? And I specifically said this isn't in response, or it pointed at, and I didn't address anybody's name. I've known the Judge family for 30-some-odd years. Solid family. Helped me get where I'm sitting today. And I respect Bernie and Nancy as much as any aunt or uncle I have. Okay? It has nothing to do with what's been done in the past. This is about a policy to set so everybody is on the same page here and understands what the purpose is. If for a 15-minute wedding, why do we need to charge? I wasn't at the Muldoon wedding. I didn't know it was a 30-minute, I have no, it wasn't, I hate to say this, I don't read the newspaper every night. I don't have time. I didn't ask anybody. It's none of my business what they did there. They had a permit. They were entitled to use the park. My motion was to set a policy, not to say, let's charge people so that people that can't afford it don't go. Okay, I think we also need to stop stop feeling that we need to apologize for being Lowell, and that now that our parks are nice, we have to let it, we have to let everybody use them, and then when they fall in disrepair, we'll just pay for it then. It's a simple motion to find out what are we going to do. We're putting a lot of money into our parks. Where do we draw our line? Because there are going to be people who apply for a birthday permit for 3 hours at a park. There are going to be people that want to go and have photos taken after a wedding. There's a big difference. That's all I'm asking for. Let's set a policy and a procedure to elaborate, to basically show people. And it's not to say, Chuck E. Cheese was going to cost you $150. We're only charging $100 this week. That has nothing to do with it. The fact of the matter is, if people use it, and we don't want to charge for birthday parties, but we should charge the Little Leagues. Those are kids. I mean, let's be consistent at least. We want to tell the Little Leagues, I know you need to do fundraising, but it's easy for you guys because you've been doing it for years. Everybody's getting charged except for these particular permits. And I'm not suggesting that someone that goes for half an hour to have vows or for photos or whatever should be charged. That wasn't the motion. I don't understand what's so difficult about understanding that. You want to have it thrown at me. First off, the motion didn't get the attention. There were articles in the newspaper before I filed the motion. It was to bring it to light, and let's discuss it, set a policy, okay? I'm not the city manager. I don't know I assume he would want to talk to Mr. Bellegarde, find out what does it cost after there's a big event at a park? What does it cost to bring it back to what it was before? Maybe nothing. Maybe ordinary wear and tear. I don't know. But I think that we, sitting here, have a duty to find out, especially if it's going to be at the exclusive use of other people. I mean, this has nothing to do with how much anybody's given to the city. This has to do with the fact that now that it's out there, we're going to have a lot of people, in my opinion, asking for this service. And what do we do? Say, well, you didn't give enough time to the city, or you haven't given enough. It needs to be, I think, set as a policy. I'm not saying, and I didn't say at any time that I support a fee and I want to see a fee attached to these permits. What I said was, I think we need to have a policy and a procedure that everybody knows it's set. If it needs to be adjusted for some reason, that's fine too. But I think it can be a working document that we can deal with, that everybody knows what it is. And some of these things that have been done, I think, expose the city to liability. So I think that should be addressed. That's easy to address. The other parts, I just want to be clear. I never said, let's charge a fee. I said I would be open to one if it was necessary for the maintenance of the parks, depending on the use. It's very, very totally different. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Donahue.
Thank you. Well, I don't think there's any harm getting some policy set and some advice, and then the council can do with it what it will. Fees are one thing. Using city workers for private ceremonies is another. And to my knowledge, that's never been done. To my knowledge, if Council on Aging's having something, that's a city department. If there are nonprofits, folk festival, all kinds of festivals in this city. The city workers work very hard, oftentimes, either overtime or comp time or what have you, putting up tables, chairs, tents. I don't know what happened, and I'm assuming there is no such policy that we use city workers to work private weddings at the cost to the city. I don't believe that. If that's the case, boy, have I been asleep for 11 years. I don't think that we're running a private catering job out of Tommy Bellegarde's garage up there on Stedman Street, or we better not be, because we don't have the wherewithal to pay. I don't care how many hours it is. City workers can't work private weddings, period. I think it's probably illegal, to be paying city workers to work private weddings. Now, it probably is a fluke. I have no idea. I read the story in the paper. That's the only thing I know about it. It's probably just a fluke if it happened, but there's a big difference between someone who's a friend who helps do some work on their own time out of the goodness of their heart, or someone who does it on the city clock. It's a dangerous precedent to be setting. We got 110,000 people here in this city who could say, hey, you know what, I have a party coming up. I'm going to, instead of hiring out, I'll have it in a park and send over some city workers to take care of it. That's what you do. That's the problem. So I don't think anyone sitting here believes that city workers should work private parties. And there should be a policy that says you don't. If a mistake was made, then admit a mistake was made. How did it happen? I don't know. But I don't believe that we're in the business of sending city workers to private parties. That's what I take. It's not my motion, but that's what I think is important, that this be clarified and cleared up. If it didn't happen, then say it didn't happen. If people were not working on the clock, then clear it up, because I never thought that was what we did here in the city. So I'm looking forward to get the information, because it is a big topic of conversation. I agree with Councilor Caulfield. The conversation I'm hearing is, since when does the city pay for workers to work private weddings? I don't believe we do. I don't believe we do, but I want an answer too.
Thank you. Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too believe that the motion was as a result of the article. I really believe the article was in the paper prior to Councilor Broderick filing his motion. And I couldn't agree more with Councilor Donahue that I think that we really need to see whether or not we're using our employees to assist with private parties. There was a quote in the paper or a comment in the paper that they were getting $20 an hour. Again, if they're working on Saturdays, it's my understanding there's a 4-hour minimum. I mean, did that happen? I'd like to know that, if that happened. And if it did happen, it shouldn't happen in the future. I think we're going down a very dangerous path here. Again, I don't think we should charge our residents to use the parks for weddings or for birthdays, but I think that we need to look at the policy and make sure that we are following proper procedure. Again, depending upon, again, I don't know if this is going to go to the city manager for report, and probably that's where it should probably go. And again, I think we should look into what did happen and what the newspaper did report on.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, did you want to?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to respond to a few of the comments that I certainly saw Councilor Broderick's motion when it was filed, and I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense for the city to be setting policies on the use of its facilities and the use of its, and I think also there should be very clear policies on how the personnel of the city are utilized. And it is, in fact, illegal to be utilizing city personnel for private purposes. There's no doubt about the fact that it may occasionally happen, but it is illegal, and it sets a bad image for the city that some people receive something that tax dollars are paying for to the benefit of a private party. So I do agree with those members of the council that have indicated support for a policy that clearly outlines how the city's resources, the city's assets are going to be utilized. That may or may not include fees. Generally speaking, this is something that many communities encounter, they deal with, that in many cases there aren't fees, but at least there's some type of policy that outlines how the use is going to take place so that it's the same rules are consistently applied to everyone. And so I'm very happy to move forward with looking at this and identifying what in fact has been the practice in the city and what should be the practice in the city to limit the liability to the city and to ensure that the city's resources are being utilized for the good of the entire city at all times. And I think the city's done a wonderful job over the last number of years in really investing in its parks, investing in its public facilities, and they should be available to the city residents to utilize in a general, open way. Anything that results in the closure of a public facility to the benefit of a smaller group, then I think we have an issue that we have to look at and identify how it's going to be utilized, what the process is going to be, and what type of resources are being needed from the city, and act accordingly. But I'll be working with staff to come up with a policy to present to the council at a subsequent meeting.
Okay. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I'll hold judgment on the motion until you bring back the policy. I don't have a problem charging people if they require city services. If non-residents want to use our park for a wedding or birthday, there should be a cost associated with that. But the people who live in this city, that's their park. And to charge them to use it is absurd. That's where I'm coming from.
Mr. Manager, Councilor Elliott.
Just to add a little bit to what I had said earlier, and also to respond to Councilor Caulfield. This is an issue that, again, we've already begun doing some work on this. Tom Bellegarde and I have sat down. We've talked about this. As Councilor Broderick pointed out, that based upon some news stories, Tom Bellegarde has is in support of doing something that ensures that the city's resources are being fully compensated. And again, I don't think it necessarily means if someone's going to go off and utilize the park for a period of time and not prohibit other people from utilizing that park, that you're going to charge them. But what it does mean is if there's being exclusive use of some city facility, then we have to identify how we're going to regulate that in some way. But they're city parks for the city residents in its entirety, and it should be treated accordingly.
Councilor Elliott.
I think Councilor Mercia had her hand up before me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Mercia.
Mr. Mayor, can you just read that motion again?
Motion. City Council requests the city manager present a policy for permit fees for private parties in city parks and city services provided for the same.
So what does permit fees for private parties mean? I thought this motion wasn't targeting private parties for a fee.
Well, as I read it, the motion is to present a
birthday parties,
policy.
wedding parties for a fee? What does that mean? I mean, it's in black and white is what I understand it to mean.
It means, I can explain.
Councilor
I made
Barrett.
it. It means establish a policy. Policy means a general regulation as to how they're going to be given. Are they going to be fees? What are they? Is it $1? Is it $100? It's a policy. What's the procedure? Who's eligible? Are we going to let out-of-town people use it for free? Are we going to restrict the time limit on it to say it's free if you take it for a half hour, an hour? I don't know what the policy is going to be. I don't know what Mr. Bellegarde's going to recommend to the manager and what in his 26 years of experience he's going to recommend to us. Policy means just that. It wasn't saying, I want you to come back with fees for private parties. It was request you bring forward a policy present a policy for permit fees for private parties. That's all. What do you present, what do you recommend as a policy? Like we do for handicap parking spaces out in front of people's homes. Can you take a look at this? Let us know if you think 15 minutes outside of this convenience store is good. 15-minute signs for parking. It's a policy to be recommended and hopefully followed. This doesn't say, you know, charge everybody so no one will use them, and charge birthday parties extra because, you know, this is not supposed to be a punitive issue. This is basically, so we get it out, we deal with it, we can discuss it and say, this is what we think is fair. This is, so everybody knows that it's the same for everybody and it's been discussed in the open, and we all know. It's just a policy. And we don't even know what it is. If the recommendation comes back that we don't charge for anything less than 2 hours, okay, fine. I'm not saying that I am recommending that we have fees. What I'm saying is I recommend we have a policy that deals with it. Whether it says no permit fees, but if you need assistance, there's going to be charges for city workers' time. If you don't clean up, then we're going to hold money on the deposit.
Well, on the face of it, it looks like you're willing to charge a fee for private parties such as weddings and birthdays. That's the way it looked on the
And I
surface.
think under the circumstances with the newspaper coverage, okay, quite candidly, that it looks like it's an attack.
Yes,
from
yes, it
your
did.
side. Now,
yes, it did.
And it certainly is not an attack. It has nothing to do with who, what, when, where is done in the past. Maybe it's gone on for 20 years. I don't know. I didn't ask. I'm not looking for names or places. I wasn't at, as I said, I wasn't at the other wedding. I don't know if it lasted 30 minutes or 30 hours. That to me is irrelevant. The reality is, though, that people should know what the policy is. We should know. I mean, I'm sure you've had people ask you. You know, I just kind of said, geez, I don't know. It seems odd. We ought to at least have a policy, especially where we're investing all this money in our parks.
In 11 years, nobody's asked me. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
I support the motion. I think it makes a lot of sense. If we just want to ignore what's taking place and just let business go as usual, we're going to continue to run into these problems. If you put it in black and white, let people know this is the procedure. I can't tell you every time you go to a park or people have asked you, you know, can I use this park? I'll just say Edward Street, for example. There's got to be 5,000 people at the Edward Street soccer field every single weekend. It's a beautiful park. Everybody would like to use it. That's not possible. But, you know, let's not forget, taxpayers of this city paid for the construction of every single park, and every single one of them should be entitled to the same privileges, the same opportunities, and the same use. Everybody wants to use the parks. They're beautiful, absolutely. But overtime should not be used. If we're going to do it for one, then do it for all. I know, Mr. Muldoon, we know the judges, they're good and they're fine people. But everyone home saying, well, you know, if I would have known this, then maybe I would have got married there and had a tent set up and chairs, if that was the case. So I think we need a policy. I think we need to let people know, if you want to use the park, this is what you have to do, and there should be a fee. I filed the motion on, exactly on this, and the motion was on August 22nd. Have the manager provide a report on policies. I can recall bringing the same motion up several months before that when Colley Stadium was being built and when it's coming online. It's a beautiful field. It's a great facility. Everybody will want to use that. So we have to set, what is the fee? I mean, we're just going to let anybody use it because there's got to be overtime. You got to have an electrician there. You have to open it up. I mean, same thing. I'm thinking Edward Street. There are bathrooms there now, thanks to the city. The city paid every single nick of the taxpayers, and that's what we have to keep in mind. It's great that we had help, no doubt about it. There's been volunteers in the city for hundreds of years. There's 103,000 people. How do we best use those parks and still preserve them? Because if you look at some of the parks that haven't been taken care of, South Lowell, the Wayne Field, they're dust bowls because they haven't been taken care of. So let's put something in place. I mean, when I had got a call from someone that this organization used Father Maguire Park, the city just resurfaced it 3 years ago. And Tom Bellegarde and his workers, they do take pride in these parks. And why should they have to go and clean it? You want a permit, put a deposit down. If you leave it, like anywhere else, you rent a pair of bowling shoes, you gotta leave your shoes. So just to make sure you get them back and they're not ruined. So I mean, you leave a deposit, and I think that we should, because if you don't, they're gonna pay the fee, whether it's nominal, and that's fine whether it's nominal. But if they don't leave in the condition, this organization broke the rim that the city just put up several years ago. We don't have any way of getting that money back. I don't think they should be allowed the permit, but guess what? Someone else had to pay for it, and the place was a mess. So I said this on August 22nd. I'll say it again. I say we get a deposit and an insurance binder. Look how many claims we have week after week after week. If we don't protect the city, then shame on us. So I say we support it. I say we put a policy in place, and I think this is a good discussion because we're protecting the city and we're protecting, I want to say, the millions that we put into these parks, and we should. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Armin Mercia.
Thank you very much. I think the most serious issue about this issue is for employees of the city to be working private parties. I don't know if that took place, and I'm not asking, but that should not take place. As far as fees, if the recommendation comes back from the manager, and I'm going to support the motion because I want to hear what the administration has to say about this, with a distinct policy on what it takes to use the park, and it has a fee to it, I will not support it. However, I will support a policy that says you need to do this, this, and this for the use of the park for the protection of the city. And I clearly know that we don't need to vote on a policy for employees not to work at private parties. That shouldn't even be an issue. That should be not taking place, period. And a manager can do that with one swoop of the pen. Every department head gets notified that you cannot, on city time, work any party, functions or anything. So that's a simple matter. This has gotten very emotional, and I can understand why the timing was horrendous. It's just amazing. But, Mr. Manager, there should be a policy, absolutely agree. The policy should spell out for everybody what it takes place to use our parks. However, I do not believe that our parks should be connected to a fee at all. If it comes back with the fee, I will not support it. But I do believe that it should be looked at by you and your department heads.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager have the traffic engineer explore the possibility of placing a four-way stop sign at the corner of Loring Street and Grove Street. Seconded by Councilor Rita Mercia. Councilor Caulfield.
Motion speaks for itself, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next motion is by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager have the traffic division check the visibility of the stop sign on Puffer Street at C Street.
That motion speaks for itself as well. I know on the agenda it says D Street, but I want to correct that. It's C Street. Thank you.
Second by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. The next motion is by Councilor Caulfield. City Council requests the city manager have the law department draw the proper vote and proper department install handicap parking sign at 96 Lafayette Street. Seconded by Councilor Rita Mercia. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will briefly speak on this motion. It's a beautiful elderly woman who lives on Lafayette Street. Her husband is an invalid. They were affected immensely by the flood, and she has a hard time now keeping the parking spot open in front of her house. Mr. Manager, I would ask if you could expedite this and install that as soon as possible. This woman and her husband are just beautiful people, and that's as much as I want to really say on it right now. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Next motion is by Councilor Milonazo. The City Council requests the city manager have the DPW install curbing on Bowden Street along Nelson Street to the corner of Seneca Street. Seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion relates to the redevelopment of the former Julian Steel site. As you know, they're putting in many yards of curbing at the Julian Steel site, and I've received a number of calls from families living along Nelson and Bowden Street looking to see if the city can connect where the actual development's going to stop installing the curbing and then connect the new curbing, to the area along Nelson Street to Seneca Street and Saratoga Street. So if the DPW could take a look at that.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Councilor, in response, we will go out there and review that immediately and see how that can tie in and what the needs are out in that particular area.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Next motion by Councilor Armin Mercier. City Council requests the city manager have the proper department inspect and license all city cabs and livery vehicles. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Armin Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This does require a little bit of explanation. It's my understanding that there is either an ordinance or there is a commission that regulates the cab companies, the cabs themselves, and the livery. I guess there's another unit where a livery vehicle can be called on but can't stop on the street to pick up. Well, I've received a lot of complaints from people who take cabs, and particularly complaint is they're afraid when they're in that cab. The condition of the cabs are just horrible. I saw a cab without a proper sticker. I saw cabs with stickers, and if you looked at the car, I don't know how they got that sticker. And I think that it's getting out of hand because we're really not looking at this situation as a problem. But it's going to turn into, I think, a serious problem because they do come under the control of the city in terms of regulations. So if you would take a look at that and assign a proper department to find how we can make sure that they're satisfying the ordinance that's in place in terms of being licensed to operate in the city of Lowell. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I think this is a terrific motion. I wholeheartedly support it. I have a little experience with this. I had just a friend of mine who works at an insurance company push me to do something about this a couple of years ago because they had a successful program cleaning up taxi cab operation in the city of Lawrence, and I resisted it at the time. I really didn't see it as a problem here. But as I've started to notice, and it's really within the last 6 months to a year that I've seen, real misuse, I think, of the livery label, which I think is, usually designed for people to pick up at a house and go to the airport or something, but not for guys to drive around the city with radios and taxi cabs. And I think it leads to poor quality in the service, and it's not fair to the people that actually go through the taxi cab regulations and get those. I think we've been spending a good deal of effort and resource to promote Lowell as a destination place where people might want to take the train up from Boston and get in a cab and come downtown or go somewhere here or there. And our service that we offer in the city really is just not up to par. So I think anything that can be done to improve this situation is certainly going to pay dividends for the city. It's no way to promote tourism if you don't have good cab service. I can remember the political conventions even we've had here in town. I've had to drive people back and forth to hotels myself because shuttle service isn't always available, and we just don't have a fleet of vehicles up to the task. So I think this is a very good motion by Councilor Armin Mercia. Support it completely.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Councilor Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to echo what Mayor Martin said. It bespeaks of the city when visitors come in and they look for a cab and they don't want to get into it. They'd rather walk. So I think it's an excellent motion. I support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Yes, Mr. Vice Mayor, I certainly support the maker of the motion and my colleagues who have spoke on it. Some of the cabs, probably most of the cabs, are disgraceful. They're deplorable. They haven't seen a car wash in months. They are not giving a good image of our city. And Mr. Manager, this is a motion I think we should really use some, flex our muscles and make them. They have to have standards. And it's some of these cabs are disgraceful. Disgraceful. Some of them belong on Tanner Street. So thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote. Thank you.
Next motion is by Councilor Rita Mercia. City Council requests the city manager develop a policy to assist physically challenged persons in the use of self-service gas stations. Seconded by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is very important to me to have in place regulations that address the needs for people with disabilities. For in the future, who knows if we, in fact, might be the very person to benefit from the result of this evening's motion. This motion involves assistance at self-service gas stations. ADA, or American with Disabilities Act, requires self-service gas stations to provide equal access for their customers with disability. People with disabilities may find it difficult or impossible to use the controls, the hose or the nozzles at self-service gas pumps. As a result, at stations that offer both and full service, people with disabilities might have no choice but to purchase the more expensive gas from a full-service pump. At locations with only self-serve pumps, they might be unable to purchase gas at all. The ADA laws require gas stations to provide refueling assistance upon request to disabled customers. This isn't my rule, this is the ADA rule. However, the rules are a little flexible to service stations with a convenience store operating on a remote control basis with a single employee, but is encouraged to do so if it's all feasible. But I ask you, have you ever been to a gas station and seen any signage that says, we offer assistance to the disabled between the hours of 7 and 8 a.m. or whatever, but I don't see it. Disabled customers are to be provided assistance without charge beyond the self-service price and should be allowed to purchase the lowest price offered and not made to buy the high test if not wanted. Patrons should be made aware through appropriate signage that customers with disability can obtain refueling assistance by either honking or otherwise signaling an employee. Honestly, I haven't seen any signs posted anywhere, or the lack thereof. I haven't seen it. Therefore, this motion is asking that a policy be put in place offering assistance to disabled customers at self-service gas stations. If there is a station in the city that can't offer refueling assistance because it is a hardship with one employee inside a store, that's fine. But have the proper signage indicating that, so that you don't have to go there if you're disabled. You can not waste your time trying to honk and nobody's going to come out. Or at least have a sign that says, we will offer refueling assistance to customers with disabilities from the hours of 7 to 8 a.m. and 6 to 7 p.m. But let's have the disabled consumer aware of each gas station's policy as it relates to our disabled population. We tend to forget any situation if it doesn't apply to us. Today it doesn't apply, tomorrow it might, but let's help the person who is disabled right now. Rules should be in place to protect our disabled. This isn't my rule, this is the rule of the ADA. And how are we going to do that? Quite simple. People who have a gas station need to apply for a license at the clerk's office. And every year they come to the city clerk's office to renew their registration. So when they do, I need to have a policy in place notifying each and every one of our gas stations that they need to post a sign on their property indicating what refueling assistance that they can offer to the disabled customer without burdening the business. It's that simple. And I'm not asking for a big ramification of a big sign or whatever, but we need some proper signage. We need to inform people and not keep them guessing as to what's going on at which particular gas station. If you can't do it, it's fine. Have a sign say, we have no people available to refuel your tank. That's the gist of the motion. And I hate to burden the city clerk, but if we could get that done, because we're only complying with ADA rules, not mine. These are not my rules, but I don't see any signage anywhere. And the reason I say that is because not all disabled people are as lucky as my husband that I get out and pump the gas. I mean, we have people that are disabled with nobody to help them. I have a neighbor next door that is handicapped. He's on the handicap commission. I don't know how he must look for a certain gas station that has full service. But there are some full-service gas stations that could offer that assistance and make you pay the highest price, and that should not ever be. So that's the gist of the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, to the councilor, I think Councilor Mercer has done an excellent job of outlining the requirements of the ADA. There are, in fact, references in the Americans with Disabilities Act of how this is supposed to be handled, and that's been well explained. In fact, in our code, there is a condition of a license that all stations have available assistance for elderly and handicapped persons unable to operate the self-service automobile dispensing system. How that is enforced and how that's carried out, I think I need to do some work on, but I'd be happy to, based upon the vote of the council, to move forward with this action.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
those,
Manager.
all those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Next motion is by Councilor Ramirez. City Council requests the city manager explore ways in which to improve residential recycling efforts throughout the city. Second by Councilor Caulfield. Councilor Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quite simply, this is just a request for you to come up with a number of different ways to improve. I did get a call today from the coordinator of recycling in the city. I was impressed by what he told me. I understand he's only been on the city payroll for maybe a month, and I was very impressed with the hard work, the initiative he has by applying for federal grants, and the involving of the schools. This motion has an education benefit because children need to start early. It's got an environmental benefit to the city and a financial benefit. And I don't know of anybody on this body that doesn't want or is not anxious to receive a report from you that is going to help us with all those three for the future of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Caulfield.
Thank you. On the motion, this is a good motion. If you want to address the deficit, this is how you do it. The recycling in the city, Mr. Manager, I told you, is 25%. And the neighborhood representatives, Carol McCarthy was here, all those people were there last night, can help us accomplish that goal. 2 years ago, the new construction on Manchester Street, there wasn't any recycling bins at that new construction site. You can set up some rules and policies that when a contractor comes in to construct new homes or whatever, that policy goes with the home. You must pick up a recycling bin. The people have to realize that if they don't recycle, the 3 barrels of waste that goes in the BFI, we're paying for it. If there's only 2 barrels that go to BFI, we're saving 1/3. It's a cost reduction in our cost. So it's an excellent motion, Councilor Ramirez. It is something this entire council should work on and work with the new recycling director. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager or Mr. McCarthy. I know we've seen this motion in the past. What are the current numbers of number of people that do recycle? I mean, you can sort of do your own random survey if you drive through the city and you see those homes that have recycling bins out and those that don't, and it seems to me when I count, it's like 1 out of every 3 or 4. Is that the case?
I think that I don't have the exact numbers on that. Maybe the assistant city manager has some numbers on that, but I do know that the recycling rate of how much of our total solid waste is recycled is relatively low compared to other communities, and I think there are several ways to address that issue. One is, I think the government itself, the city government and the schools, I think Councilor Ramirez has spoken to that, need to do more in terms of recycling. In this very building, we need to do more in cutting down on our total waste. The enforcement of how much trash people can put out, the limits on how much trash people can put out needs to be, that needs to be enforced.
That was going to lead to my next question, Mr. Manager. What is the limit? I
believe it's five containers, six containers, I'm sorry. It's limited to 6 containers per.
But how is that enforceable? I mean, unless the people on the truck start counting, and that's not going to happen, let's face it.
Therein lies part of the problem.
But what is the minimum number of units that is required to have a dumpster? Meaning, after how many units are
6
It
units.
is 6. Well, I'm going to file a motion in regards to that, because I think there's a lot of illegal dumping being done. And you go by these, you go by certain units, and you see these mounds of trash, and I think that's something that we really need to step in on. And when we see that, how many units are there, and maybe we need to lower that number of units. Maybe it has to be, I honestly thought it was 4. I know Council Mercier had filed this some time ago, recycling at condominium projects and other locations, and I thought it was 4 units right now, but you're saying it's 6. So maybe we need to take a look and provide some accountability for trash and what is going into the trash. You see, more often than not, you can tell someone's moved out because there's like 4, 5, 6 bedrooms or rooms of furniture. So in any event, I support the motion, not only for recycling, but I'll file a motion later on what we need to do about our garbage collection and address, because that's where the devil is.
Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I think that ties in very well with Councilor Ramirez's motion that in terms of trying to increase recycling by cutting down on how much waste people can, cut down on how much waste people can generate. And then educating people to the value of recycling for environmental reasons, but also, as Councilor Caulfield pointed out, for the cost reduction element. So I think a comprehensive strategy, and I'm very excited with our new recycling coordinator. It's nice to see some people here that have less seniority than me working for the city. But he's been very helpful to us already in identifying resources that are available, in dealing with the recycling issue, and cutting down on our solid waste. And I'm anxious to get that report back to you in quick measure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. The last motion is mine. Any objection from reading it here?
Absolutely.
Okay. City Council requests the city manager have the proper department repair the sidewalk on Hampstead Street at 324 Boylston Street. Second by Council Armand Mercier. Mr. Manager, the real emphasis here is that this be done this season if possible. This so residents been waiting patiently for 2 or 3 years, and it was promised it could get taken care of this year. It's really become hazardous to remove snow in the winter and doesn't want to have to go through another winter. Councilor Caulfield.
I support your motion, Mr. Mayor. Not on your motion, but I neglected to let the manager know and my colleagues know. There was an informational communication in our packet that the neighborhood subcommittee would meet with the residents on Westchester Street. I took it upon myself to take a survey. I went up Westchester Street all weekend long, and I went to 95% of the homes on both sides of Westchester Street. And 95% of those people indicated they would welcome a sidewalk. So I know Commissioner Walsh wanted to get some feedback, and I talked to my colleagues that, instead of having a subcommittee meeting at the school and having people come out of the houses, I went to their doors. So they all agreed that it's well worth it.
Okay. We didn't vote the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye. Any opposed? The motion's approved. Councilor Rita Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other night we had a neighborhood traffic subcommittee, and as I left the building, I didn't really realize it till I got away from the city hall and turned around and looked. It's very, very dark down here. It is. So since we're at a city council meeting, please take note that when we leave, how dark it is. This is a beautiful building. I think it should be illuminated to some degree, but it poses as a very risky, I don't know how to put it, but it's pretty dark, and I never realized it till I turned around and said, wow, it could invite trouble, and I don't want our beautiful property to...
Okay. I do have one announcement before we adjourn. There is this Sunday, October 1st at 11 a.m. is the first annual Blue versus Red charity softball game. Proceeds to benefit the Cancer Center of Saints Medical Center and Lowell General Hospital. Is at Martin Softball Field again this Sunday, October 1st, 11 a.m. Lowell Police Patrolmen's Union against the Lowell Firefighters Union. Admission is free, but there will be several vehicles on display, as well as a raffle, music, prizes, and there will also be food and drink available for purchase. Again, proceeds for the cancer centers at Saints and Lowell General. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Armin Mercier, seconded by Councilor Ramirez. All those in favor say aye. We stand adjourned.
Don't forget Hazardous Waste Day Saturday. We'll go this way.